The contents of this video are protected by federal law under the Fair Use Act and reserve all rights under the Fair Use Act as well as the First Amendment. I normally don't say this before a video, but please download this video as it may be removed. Please watch this video in its entirety before casting judgment upon my dissertation, if you will, please. World history is written by master deceivers. These masters of deception are certainly found in the realms of higher Freemasonic orders or occult religions, if you will, like Satanism, or pseudo-religions like Scientology, all bent on complete cultural manipulation at any cost. History teaches us of high-profile Freemasonic or secretive orders or dark brotherhoods who supplant figureheads into the social construct. These illegitimate, highly trained and motivated plants or moles or assets are propped up financially and socially by these secret societies behind the scenes, who subsequently provide the current culture and future generations with a version of history that is a twisted deception, completely misaligned with the original intent of the natural awakening process of the masses. Their tactics include distorting facts in order to control the very foundational understandings which provide the pretext for the fallacious, socially engineered paradigm to come. You might call this role of the agent a painter, or someone who sets the stage for future conflicts, which is coordinated in advance as a Trojan horse or built-in self-destruct mechanism supplanted into the gathering of natural dissenters who represent the genuine masses of people involved with the movement. Any such grassroots movement, for example, the current truth movement, which amounts to revelation of absolute deception which has clouded the collective consciousness for generations, such grassroots movements will be co-opted and misled by the so-called illuminated as a rule. It really is no surprise the current truth movement is also infiltrated with master deceivers. Masses of people who begin to wake up and grow wise to the nature of the deceptive plans of the elite, or in the postmodern era grow wise to the facade of the status quo, and the lengths to which said secretive orders will go in preventing an upheaval of their rigged system, or the status quo, which is supported strictly by deception and manipulation on an institutionalized scale. Such grassroots awakenings will necessarily be subverted and co-opted by agents of the elite agenda. These agents will pose as protagonists of the grassroots community, gathering followers who will feel they are joining a group of like-minded people with an imagined connection to outspoken leaders who are actually inimical to the truth movement itself, yet continue to be promoted and funded, ensuring their facade as pillars to the movement remains polished and promoted. They will promote often ridiculous, irrelevant, red herring arguments which are then married to the concept of truth which others are genuinely trying to promote, creating an effective effigy or fallacious representation of the genuine movement itself, necessarily using meaningless slogans or, in the current movement, convoluted memes or logos which will later be used to contain the grassroots movement, at least in the public eye. Such memes or logos will be given extreme importance to those who are within the inner circle of a decidedly volatile cross-section of the movement itself. To the average passerby who is not aware of the essence of the political upheaval in question, they are meaningless rants, meaningless slogans, and meaningless images, while these Meaningless effigies are essentially idolized and hold significant meaning to a certain cross section within the genuine minority group in the awakening process. Of course, said effigy will hold exactly no meaning with anyone outside the inner circle of the crypto protagonist group, including people who are not 100% aware of the underlying message or the purpose of the grassroots movement itself. And it would also include genuine truth seekers who are involved with the grassroots movements, who are then programmed to believe in the slogan or believe in the meme more than they are concerned about the underlying facts of the truth movement itself. This causes proponents for the movement to become inherently associated with a mob, at least in the public eye, associated with a mob of well intentioned people who communicate their message to the world using meaningless slogans or memes, and sometimes violence. Those posing as antagonists, pretending to genuinely disagree with the movement, are secretly working together with the crypto protagonists, and they will eventually capitalize on this straw man or the red herring effigies of the truth laid forth and popularized by the protagonist, proceeding to demolish or disprove this effigy, which has nothing to do with the truth or the genuine people behind the truth movement itself. Throughout history, humankind has been controlled in this manner so that if any mass awakening begins to occur, the agents of the Dark Brotherhood will necessarily be employed and dug into the community, hiding in plain sight. They will necessarily be provided with a platform which makes them appear to stand out from the actual genuine proponents for the truth and the genuine members of the community behind the movement. This provides the sociological illusion that the crypto protagonists are something they actually are not, and further allows them to operate with a sort of impunity without accountability or repercussions for extremely questionable behavior, or promoting or condoning or praising outright devious behavior. They'll have networks set up ready to go, turnkey networks complete with a staff of invisible people to promote and praise these phonies or bash and slander the crypto antagonist. The same platform and support group would allow the deceivers to superficially connect with individual followers, a specific targeted cross section of the truth movement itself, again using meaningless reward mechanisms to make them feel as if they're part of a group and feel as if they're somehow being rewarded for their actions. And this same group will then silence any dissenters or people questioning their narrative, and you can expect them to attempt smearing the credibility of dissenters by starting rumor mills or attempting to cast doubt upon the genuine voices within the awakening truth movement community itself. Now, again, while this is all to be expected, if you know anything about the nature of the adversary, this is all an effective containment operation planned and crafted to ensure that once the crypto protagonist agrees with the crypto antagonist, that the effigy arguments have been sufficiently refuted, which of course will happen, or these effigy arguments have been publicly destroyed as fake news, they will bring many of their followers down with them, bring many people back to sleep, with a more powerful effect in the minds of the public at large who are totally unaware of this truth and this awakening, and it affects them to a much wider scale and probably to a much further degree. That would be the majority of the sleeping world by the law of groupthink or herd mentality. And so, by publicly destroying or refuting the effigy, then the public eye will see the entire truth movement as something that was debunked as a psychological operation, which indeed it is in this regard. Now, while the crypto protagonist and crypto antagonist appear to be on opposing sides of the truth movement outwardly, This is an extremely superficial act to create buzz or speculation on both sides, giving false credibility to one another by playing the role of opposing forces while being in collusion the entire time. While they never admit to their league openly or in plain English, usually, there appears to be some legal boundaries in place where these deceivers are obligated to sort of secretly announce their allegiance in public or announce their allegiance publicly in such a way that anyone paying attention who is awake should recognize and vocally dissent against. However, many don't notice it, and so anyone not clever enough, this is their thinking, anyone not clever enough to discern the admission of the deceiver is assumed to be a non thinker. Hence, any lack of protest or dissent will imply consent by default from the genuine individuals being controlled by the narrative, which ultimately has nothing to do with the true purpose or the truth behind the movement in the first place. There's a very old slogan that they've used for a long time, but order ab chaos, or order out of chaos, is the only trick it seems this adversary has in their playbook. It's like that's the only thing, the only way they know how to control sociological awakenings and gathering of people. Order out of chaos. If things aren't going the way they want, or if there are people waking up to the mechanisms of their control, they will necessarily employ their sworn legions to control these social awakenings using this exact same method every single time. They will create characters on both sides of such grassroots movements of awakening people trying to share the truth with others. These characters will play very specific roles to control the conversation. These characters will gain followers or people who become entranced by their manipulative tactics and behave in such a manner which is not representative of the genuine people who comprise the truth movement. The deceivers playing the role of protagonist will be expected to fit in with the crowd of actual people working very hard to wake others up. But they are either so arrogant that they feel they can even announce themselves to be disingenuous, but people won't understand it, or they are bound by some sort of legality to announce their true purpose before they can manipulate people to their ends. The following is an interview with a fairly well known so called flat earther who is obviously part of this controlled opposition mechanism, and he's playing the role of protagonist. And this little hangout interview with well known troll, not going to say any names, none of these people use their real names, but you guys out there know who they are, and if you don't, then this should be fairly obvious to you if you've studied the practices of the Dark Brotherhood whatsoever. I will mention that the so called flat earther that we're dealing with here claims that he, quote, used to be a 32nd degree Freemason, end quote. And I would like to point out that the only people in this world who used to be 32nd Freemasons are 33rd degree Freemasons and possibly higher. People like Bill Schneblin claim that he was a 99-degree Freemason because he was also a witch. Oh, and by the way, this flat earther also claims to be a practicing witch. So, whatever your feelings are on this sort of thing, anyone who's been in the truth movement and knows what's going on understands that we are up against Freemasons and witches. So, for someone to claim that they used to be a 32nd degree Freemason is just absurd. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever unless you consider the fact that he's acknowledging that he's now a 33rd degree Freemason or an enlightened one. I know for a fact when you reach the 32nd and 33rd degrees of Freemasonry, it is revealed to you, if you hadn't already figured it out, that the Freemasons essentially worship some made up entity called Jabulon, and they obviously have nothing to do with the Bible whatsoever, which is what a lot of people think about Freemasons. In fact, their rituals are based on Talmudic rites, and if you don't know about the Talmud, it is a hidden text of Judaism, and I'm not saying that this applies to all Jewish people by any means, just as KKK members don't apply to all white people, just as, I don't know, Black Panther Party members don't apply to all African American people, and jihadist terrorist doesn't apply to all Muslim people, and on and on and on. So, in the same regard, anyone who practices Talmud based rites, regardless of what their blood is, maybe we'll look a little bit more into the Talmud at another time, but let's just say that it is the embodiment of pure evil as far as I'm concerned. But let's get into the clip.
People have asked my motivation. They said, "Are you just doing it for the money, for the friends, or whatever?" But like, who wakes up and says, "Let me go make friends with a bunch of flat earthers"?
Okay, so for context, the person who was just speaking is the alleged so-called flat earther who is obviously an Illuminati Freemason witch. He just said, who wakes up one day and makes friends with a bunch of flat earthers?" Almost as if it's a derogatory term. And the answer to that question is somebody who's realized that the earth is flat. That's who gets up in the morning and wants to make friends with a bunch of flat earthers, because people who believe that they live on a spinning globe tend to be very irrational and tough to deal with when you bring this truth to them. And so, genuine flat earthers wake up in the morning and make friends with other genuine flat earthers, and not Freemasonic Illuminati shills.
Like nobody. But no, my motive. I'm going to bring this thing to a close. We got 5 months for this little shindig here. This is going to end.
So that's pretty telling. We're dealing with an inside joke. This is something that is known between them. Otherwise, the first question out of any normal person's mouth would have been, "What do you mean 5 months? 5 months for what?" And the fact that nobody questions what he's saying means that they understand exactly what he's saying. Now, this video was posted on Father's Day, but it appears that it may have been recorded before Father's Day. So, anyway, just thought that I would point that out because that's not the only time that that 5 months thing is mentioned in this, and I'd really like to know. And I'm sure that this crypto protagonist, Illuminati flat Earth shill, has some explanation for what he means by 5 months, but that's all up to speculation unless you're in on the secret, unless you're in on the joke, or possibly the fictitious version of the actual secret, so yet another red herring used to deceive people. Then you won't know what he's talking about in terms of this is all going to end in 5 months.
It's going to end one way or the other. And if it's flat, it's flat. If it's round, it's round.
If it's flat, it's flat. If it's round, it's round. Now, I know this may sound a little bit preemptive on the incredulity, however, I know for a fact that anyone who comes out as a vocal flat earther knows for a fact that the earth is not a spinning ball. And for someone to say, if it's flat, it's flat, if it's round, it's round, like you really haven't made your mind up and there really isn't anything to prove it, then subsequently goes to state that some sort of ridiculous experiment is going to prove this once and for all, which is abject nonsense. There's no curvature to the Earth. It's not spinning. And so the Earth is definitely not a spinning sphere. Yet, why would someone wake up in the morning and make flat Earth friends? If it's flat, if it's round, this is not what a flat earther says. A flat earther is so overwhelmingly blown away by the information that we know to be true, 100% observable, repeatable, definite reality, and we want to share that with people, yet that isn't the case with this crypto protagonist, flat earth Illuminati shill. And of course it isn't. Why would you expect anything different?
This thing to a close. You know, we got 5 months for this little shindig here. This is going to end. It's going to end one way or the other. And if it's flat, it's flat. If it's round, it's round. I'll be the first to admit it.
Do you believe the Earth is flat?
I'm agnostic about its rotundity, but I won't say it's flat unequivocally.
That's good.
Agnostic about its rotundity? Won't say it's flat unequivocally? This, again, is not what a real flat earth proponent sounds like. This is what a shill sounds like. Because in the last 2 years, so many people are wide awake to this and know unequivocally that the earth is flat. There is no curvature, there's no belief or agnosticism necessary. If you measure for this, the curvature doesn't exist. If you measure for motion of the earth, that doesn't exist. The earth is stationary and has no curvature. Therefore, it is absolutely no sort of spinning sphere whatsoever by any stretch of the imagination. And so, for someone coming out, gathering up flat earth proponents and deceiving them and telling his dark brothers, these people are obviously in league with one another. It's painfully obvious. It's almost like as obvious as a wrestling match. They don't actually punch each other in the face. They slapped their leg when they punched the guy in the face to make it sound like they did. They're not hurting each other. They're playing together for one common goal. In the case of wrestlers, it's obviously to make money and be famous wrestlers. In the case of Illuminati flat earth shills and Illuminati globe earth trolls, what this is obvious collusion, and their goal is to discredit flat earth in the public eye, because there's plenty of thousands of people out there, maybe millions in the world, who know the earth is flat, but there's billions who don't. And once the mainstream media has some sort of destruction of the flat earth effigy to present to the public, it's going to draw attention to this ridiculous Psy-Op, which is being hoisted upon the vulnerable, trusting, loving flat earth community, and using that trust against them as a form of gullibility. And this really has to be stopped. But let's continue the interview, because it really gets much, much worse than this.
Rotundity, but I won't say it's flat unequivocally.
That's good.
Okay, and when known globe earth trolls say that something that you're doing is good, I would call that a fairly good indicator of a red flag. And to anybody who's paying attention whatsoever, I'd like you to just compare this and contrast this with a hangout that I did with some of the same people here. I did a hangout with 3 people. I'll play a 5 minute, I'll pick a random 5 minutes out of it and play the clip, and just see if you can tell the difference between the way that I was treated when dealing with this same crowd and the way that this Illuminati flat earth shill is being dealt by this same crowd. And I'll put a card to that video in its entirety in case you want to check that out as well. It's pretty painful though, warning. Well, the first thing I can do is disprove the heliocentric model, and that's a good start, I think.
Okay, so we asked you the first question. You said you're ready to die because you have proof that the world is flat. Okay, now the world would like to know what that proof is, and your answer to that is, I'm not going to show it to you. I'm going to prove to you it's not a globe. Am I correct on that? Yes or no?
Well, actually, no. You're totally making stuff up. I never said I was ready to die for anything.
Really? Would you want me to actually turn on my YouTube on my Xbox right now, and we'll play it live for everyone to hear? You say that you're ready to have the government kick down your door and shoot you in the head because you told a few people about flat Earth. You said it, Morgile. Your own words, bro. And I'm going to have to put you in check for saying, wow. Yo, Tim, did he say that? Did you guys not hear him say that?
It's in my video, dude. I thought it was pretty humorous, actually.
I mean, you can, Morgile. You know the things you say, bro?
one of the things I've said, and I've said it several times, is that if I were to die tomorrow, I'd have a fulfilled life because I finally learned the truth after a lifetime of lies. But I
Poor guy,
never
you
said,
said the government could kick down your door right now and kill you, and you'd be happy because you told people about flat Earth. I'll pull it up
The
and play it
truth
right now,
about
man.
flat Earth.
I mean, for real, Morgan. I will pull it up and play it right now. So when we say you talk out your ass, we're saying because of shit like that. That's not being an asshole or a troll. I've asked you now for the third time. I'm going to ask you. You said in that video you can prove that the world is flat. I don't
in
want
what
to hear all your debunking of the globe.
what
I
video?
want you to prove that the world.
You said umpteen times. You said you could prove that the Earth is flat, dude.
Whoa. We're talking about two different things.
Okay,
The other
in
day,
the Week Shill Show review video with you, Lori, and Lawrence, that's when you made these comments, okay? There's your answer to that. And you said, I know the world's flat, and I can prove it. You said you can prove it. Now,
Sure.
we started this off asking that
Give
question,
him a second.
and we still haven't gotten the proof. That's all I want. I would love for you to show it to me because I think that would be pretty fucking cool. I really do.
Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but let's start with one point, and we can debate that, and we can move to other points. But the first thing that totally demolishes the heliocentric model is the fact that if you're standing at the equator looking directly overhead in the winter, you can see the same stars overhead in the summer from the same spot. So that right there totally disproves heliocentrism.
Can I explain something? Can I explain something to you really quickly, Morgan? Because I don't think you can put this into perspective. I really, and I don't think a lot of people can, and I don't even think that I can. How big space and stars and how fucking far these things are.
It has nothing to do with that.
So that just gives you sort of an idea of what was going on. We had just started the hangout at that point, and instead of introducing themselves to me, they just started asking me all of these bizarre questions about something I had said months prior, but he was talking about it as if I had brought it up in that conversation. So I wasn't sure what they were talking about, and it just goes on and on like that. So they essentially wouldn't give me a chance to speak. They wouldn't listen to reason. It was just a big fiasco. And so, compare and contrast that to the polite courtesy that the Freemasonic Illuminati shills give to one another when in conversation with one another.
Okay.
There we go. IPS, how you doing, bud? I was pissing. Sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, what's up, Ed Upside Down Head? Yeah, I don't think anybody should be committing and saying, I know unequivocally it's a flat Earth because we don't have a model, as you've noticed.
What? Wait a minute. We can't say unequivocally it's a flat Earth because we don't have a model, as if we need a model to know the Earth is not a spinning ball. The heliocentric model has been thoroughly debunked. It's quite ridiculous actually, and all of the just empirical mountains, never-ending mountains of evidence show that the Earth is a plane, that many miles of standing water do not have any sort of convexity or curvature to them, and the Earth is absolutely 100% definitely flat. And I think I'd just like to point out real quick that nobody in their right mind would ever wake up in the morning and make friends with a bunch of flat earthers and go around saying the earth is flat unless they knew it 100%. I'm sorry, but this is just a very telling observation about this person's true intentions.
What we do know is that we have room for doubt, and I'm going to work towards overcoming that doubt by bringing about some evidence in the form of some guy who's sending a rocket up to the Kármán line.
Wait a minute here. Let's just back up the wagons. Was anybody paying attention to what he just said at all? There's room for some doubt, and he's going to overcome that doubt, and you have to read between the lines in terms of what he's saying. Let me just roll that clip one more time because this is code speak. They're speaking to each other with occult language.
What we do know is that we have room for doubt, and I'm going to work towards overcoming that doubt by bringing about some evidence in the form of some guy who's sending a rocket up to the Kármán line.
Some guy that's sending a rocket up to the Kármán line? What does that have to do with flat Earth at all? Okay, so $7,000 is raised to put a flat Earth sticker on the side of this thing, which is a steam rocket that makes absolutely no sense. And if something happens to this guy, let's just say hypothetically he dies in this accident, that's going to be tied in the media with flat earthers. So the cover story for the media is "Stupid Flat Earthers Kill Stuntman." That's going to be the headlines, and hopefully by making this video and calling out my dissent, perhaps my hope is to change the trajectory of these plans, because when they tell us their plans out in the open like this, if nobody objects, if nobody dissents, then again, that is implied consent. And so they have every right to do whatever it is they plan to do. And I'm telling you right now, this character's plan is to discredit Flat Earth in the public eye. And he's doing so from a position of a wolf in sheep's clothing. And really, he doesn't even wear the sheep's clothing that well. It's almost like he's not even trying to hide it. And that's how these people operate. It is in plain sight. It has always been that way. And it is no exception with this example.
Doesn't even have to get that high, you know? I mean, even if he gets halfway there, it'll be sufficient.
Okay, the Kármán line is allegedly about 62 miles up. Getting halfway there would be 36 miles. That's never going to happen in a steam rocket. The highest that we can get up in terms of amateurs is about 100 to maybe 150,000 feet with weather balloons. In terms of typical rocketry, even amateur rocketry, like in the case of the Go Fast rocket, that got up to 72 miles, which is 10 miles further than the Kármán line, allegedly. And although they used GoPro fisheye lenses, we got some really good evidence from that the Earth is indeed flat, even from 72 miles vantage point, when you're not looking at the imaginary or trickery of a fisheye lens that causes fake curvature to appear whenever the angle of the camera is either higher or lower than the horizon itself. However, when that camera aligns to the horizon, we can see even at 72 miles that there's no curvature, and also that the moon can be seen when it should be on the opposite side of the so-called spherical Earth. The idea of sending a steam rocket up there is just absurd. It is patently absurd. This is something that if they go forward with it as planned, it's going to fail, most likely. And even if it doesn't fail in terms of a catastrophic failure, it's not going to prove or disprove anything about the shape or nature of the Earth. We don't need to do that. We already know the Earth is flat and stationary, and these Freemasonic shills trying to put together some publicity stunt, a straw man to be burned, and effigy to be slaughtered in order to completely discredit flat earthers and the flat earth truth movement in the public eye.
We have room for doubt, and I'm going to work towards overcoming that doubt by bringing about some evidence in the form of some guy who's sending a rocket up to the Kármán line. Doesn't even have to get that high, you know? I mean, even if he gets halfway there, it'll be sufficient.
So we have Mr. B on the panel here. He kind of knows a little bit. He was talking about the steam rocket. We didn't really understand how it was going to be launched up and how far it was going to get. Do you really think that he's going to get near the Kármán line with the steam rocket?
Good question. Good question. I know he's going to get up. I guarantee that the 130,000 feet, no problem. 42 miles from there, I don't know.
No, it's not a good question. It's a silly question because there's an obvious answer. The answer is no. A steam rocket is not going to get anywhere near the Kármán line. That is just ridiculous to even say that. What's even more ridiculous is to attach the concept of flat Earth to a patently absurd venture that is an exercise in complete folly, and marrying that just fallacious nonsense to flat Earth and claiming that we need to do something like this to prove flat Earth, and gaining followers to raise money for this adventure without even knowing whether or not it's going to get to the Kármán line or saying that's a good question. No, it is not a good question. It's a ridiculous question. And no, this stunt has nothing to do with flat Earth. And frankly, I feel sorry for anybody who put their money towards this because, first of all, it's going to fail at its objective, at least as far as the flat earthers are concerned. It's definitely going to be a win for the Illuminati shills either way, whether it ends in catastrophe or whether they strap a GoPro to it again to prove curvature. I mean, who knows? But yes, okay, so even if they put a regular camera on there, it's not going up as high as amateur rockets go. So, not steam rockets. Steam rockets come from the early 1800s. We have far more advanced amateur rocketry, and we don't need to send a person up in a death trap married to the concept of flat Earth in order to prove or disprove flat Earth. This whole conversation is obviously a public revelation of their plan here. And I really hope and pray that you guys realize this by the end of this video, and it gets even worse than this.
I don't know. I'm looking into the person who's designing it. In fact, I spoke with him yesterday, and he's releasing a 4-page PDF document that will explain the specifications.
Okay.
So
Very good.
I'm gonna.
That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, once you've read that, you can decide.
Okay.
Okay, so flat earthers, in quotes, flat earthers, have already decided to pull the trigger on this ridiculous stunt, and they haven't even read the 4-page PDF explaining the logistics. I'd love to see this. In fact, I guess I'm sort of forced to pull this alleged 4-page PDF up and just see exactly what it says. I did find this Mad Mike character from, you can find a video, the one that I found was published in January of 2015. I'm not going to play it because I'll get a copyright strike for that. It's allegedly copyrighted material, but you can find it, and his steam rocket goes up maybe a couple thousand feet, if that, and he parachutes down and injures himself just going up a couple thousand feet. The stunt that they're trying is just patently absurd, absolutely ridiculous nonsense. So, I'm not going to dig too deep for this alleged 4-page PDF, honestly, but I did find the GoFundMe page for the so-called Flat Earth Community rocket launch, and they're at about, well, $2,000 of an $8,000 goal. Lots of people, some people's names that I recognize here have contributed to this, and let's just take a look at this a little bit. This is the most recent update. The next $40 plus donation will get this 16 by 20 acrylic canvas painting by Tim Osman with a Z, so that's not the Globe Earth Troll, donated by IPS. Let's just take a look at this image a little bit and see if this looks like something that a truther would really want to hang in their house. It's got the standard Freemasonic checkerboard floors, which is always something that they will include in their artwork. Oh, and by the way, the person who painted this is the same person who is the alleged flat earther who happens to be an Illuminati shill. Now, if you look at the overall picture, there's probably some hidden meaning to it, and I'm not going to try to dissect that, but overall, it is just a very disturbing picture, reminiscent of stuff that you might find hanging up in Buffalo Bill's basement dungeon.
It rubs the lotion on its skin. It does this whenever it's told.
Very disturbing stuff, and I would not donate $40 to this for any reason, certainly not for that quite horrible painting. You hang that in your house, you're liable to get followed around by a demon. Also, you'd think that if there was any sort of logistical information that was published by this alleged stuntman about this rocket launch, that we might find it on their GoFundMe page. However, you won't find anything but 2 little updates. The one was about that painting, the one is about another painting, And you have the story, which basically tells you absolutely nothing except for just a brief summary of what they want to do. So I'll just go ahead and read it. We were contacted recently by a gentleman named Mad Mike Hughes. Not only is Mad Mike Hughes a daredevil, but he's also a flat earther who ran across our billboard while watching Flat Earth Media. Mad Mike's main stunt is loading himself into a rocket and firing it from a rocket launcher. And I'll just make a note real quick, insert this note. It is nothing to really brag about. It is extremely lackluster. If you watch the rocket launches, previous rocket launch of this gentleman, allegedly. Anyway, back to the quote. The rocket then deploys a parachute and he makes his landing. In the email, he informed us he would be performing his next stunt at the end of July in a glorious rocket launch for which he said he wanted to promote flat earth awareness with our sponsorship. So he wanted money from the flat earthers. He wants the flat earth community to sponsor his next event. You can check out Mad Mike's last rocket jump in 2015 by YouTubing Mad Mike Rocket Jump. Mad Mike Hughes called into a recent Infinite Plane Society, whatever that is, live stream to discuss his rocket launch, hoaxes, flat earth, and more. The interview is attached. And it goes on about the size of the sticker and the amount of money that they want to raise on their GoFundMe. But in terms of the logistics of what they're exactly planning to do, there's really not a whole lot to find. And maybe, US internet sleuths out there with more time on your hands than I can find this alleged 4-page PDF file, but I'm sure it's interesting. And if I find it before ending the making of this video, then I'll try to include it, if not verbally, as an attachment or a, linked up page. Also, I just want to comment on the sort of convenience of this narrative. So, we're expected to believe that this Mad Mike Hughes character is a flat earther, yet he only got the brilliant idea to bilk flat earthers for money after he saw the billboard that this Illuminati shill posing as a flat earther helped to get put up. And then he actually lied to the press about his name, told them he was someone else, which, by the way, that is not the first time he's done that. And I'm pretty sure that he uses other people's names all the time, although in secret, in order to discredit other people. One other example would be he used a well-known globe Earth troll who was also an Illuminati shill, the very same Illuminati globe Earth shill that is on the other end of the conversation that we're dissecting here. He uses his stage name, which isn't even his real name, uses that stage name as the pen name for all of the alleged flat earth books that he's written. He also used another prominent flat earth proponent's name in a public hearing. This person loves to use pseudonyms or fake names because that's how Illuminati shills roll. But the point is, though, that if Mad Mike Hughes was actually a flat earther and he wanted to get the flat earth message out, he wouldn't be bilking flat earthers for money, almost $8,000, in order to put a mere sticker on the side of his little rocket that he was going to be launching up anyway. This is just a means of extorting money out of the like I said, trusting and therefore gullible in these people's eyes flat earth community. And so I really hope that by the end of this video, and yes, it indeed gets worse, that this person that we're discussing here is not to be trusted, and you shouldn't put the flat earth reputation on the line with the public stunts of this lunacy. It is absolute lunacy.
So, what I want to do here is make the point that it is in the best interest of all of us on all sides of this thing to see this thing through to its conclusion, and we're going to reach an answer faster through Mad Mike than through anybody else.
When he says that it's in the best interest for all of us on all sides of this thing, he's not talking about flat earth proponents and globe earth trolls. He's talking, when he says refers to all of us on all sides of this thing, he's referring to the brotherhood which he's working with. And it even appears as if that this Illuminati flat earth shill is of a higher rank and of more knowledge in terms of the esoteric cultism than any of the other shills on this show. So just want to point that out. Also, in what context could such a ridiculously contrived stunt event be any sort of deciding factor in the scientific venture to prove the shape and nature of the Earth? That is the most absurd thing I've ever heard, unless you put it in the context of how these Illuminati shills plan to take down an effigy of flat Earth truth in the public eye and in the media once and for all, so that flat earthers will be permanently labeled as science denying idiots because they will be associated with this effigy of flat earth truth that is planned on being destroyed, I would suppose, within the next 5 months at the very latest. I would also submit that I'm really very much hoping to accomplish one thing with this video and one thing only, and that is to change the trajectory of the events that they have in plan. By calling this out and by voicing my dissent to this whole thing, I am not giving my consent, and therefore it very well may change the trajectory of events that transpire in this whole ridiculous flat earth steam rocket stunt hoax. Perhaps that will have a positive effect on flat earth in general, although I realize that my credibility will suffer as a result, because in changing the trajectory of these events, it will make this whole foreshadowing that I'm giving to you guys right now seem to be paranoia, although had I not vocalized this, the trajectory of events that would have transpired may have been different, and for all we know, Mad Mike Hughes would have died in the rocket crash, whereas now that I've made this video and said this, perhaps the news story will be that Mad Mike did not at least die in the rocket crash. The flat earth rocket crash, that is. Although, it's very much up in the air as to whether or not this guy actually is a stuntman and whether or not he's actually going to be in the rocket. So they can tell the story however they want, but not to attack the credibility of this man, Mad Mike. I've never heard of him. He is being promoted a lot because he's come out as a flat earther, although it is fairly suspect to me that any flat earther would wait for a billboard to be put up before deciding to do a stunt that just so happens to coincidentally bilk flat earthers for $8,000.
With all their speculation or their talks about going across Antarctica, no, this is going to do it.
As opposed to all this speculation and talks about going past the Antarctic, this is going to do it. First of all, the only reason we want to go to the Antarctic is to see what's beyond. We already know the Earth is flat. All flat earthers know that. That's why they're flat earthers. Flat earthers don't need proof that the Earth is flat. We have literally so much proof that the Earth has no curvature, nor is it spinning, that any experiment can only confirm this further. If you want to put this in the public eye, it really is quite a silly idea to make a complete fiasco, spectacle out of the whole thing. That is what Illuminati shills do. This rocket launch isn't going to do anything but ruin the credibility of flat earthers if we're not careful. If we allow others to put this obvious Illuminati flat earth shill on a pedestal and continue feeding his really quite bizarre social media campaign that involves the effigy of a penguin, and people sort of seem to somehow worship this penguin, and yet the penguin has no meaning whatsoever to anyone except for a really very specific sect of or cross section of flat earthers.
Or their talks about going across Antarctica, no, this is going to do it. So save your lunch money. You only need about $10 per person.
Well, I think that it's probably, no one really thought of this. I think one of the best ones was some kind of an Antarctic expedition. I personally don't think that you have to cross the Antarctic. I think you can use the South Celestial Pole as navigation and be basically looking at Antarctica and have two boats going in opposite directions, basically. and it would be like 60,000 miles if it was a flat Earth, and it's going to be much, much, much shorter if it's a sphere.
Honestly, that was so forced, and I believe that's the first time I've ever heard that Globe Earth troll say those words, if it's a sphere. So, isn't that very convenient that he says it now? However, for him to say that all we need to do is take a couple of boats to the South Arctic Circle, essentially looking at Antarctica, and each, do a half circumnavigation, yes, that is a good point if you're sort of humoring an AE layout, which isn't necessarily anything to do with flat Earth. I mean, it's not a model. The azimuthal equidistant projection isn't a model. It's merely a projection, and so we really don't have any good actual maps that represent the face of the Earth in its entirety, because frankly it's impossible to image the entire face of the land masses of the Earth at once. And so having a map is really quite irrelevant to this. Having a model is really quite irrelevant to this. This is about measuring for Earth curvature and axial rotation. That's all this ever was about. And all of the observations and measurements always never fail to prove and indeed confirm a flat, stationary Earth. And frankly, the fact that these Illuminati shills are telling everyone exactly what they're planning to do is just obvious. If you're awake and your eyes are open, it is
And
obvious.
it's going to be much, much, much shorter if it's a sphere. But I mean, that does cost quite a bit of money, and it sounds like a lot of this rocket is already being the money's being provided. So this is only just for $7,000 is for the flat Earth logo on it.
Yeah, 7,000 gives us the Flat Earth logo. We're sponsors, and it turns the rocket launch in August into a Flat Earth thing.
There you have it. There you have it. The rocket launch is already paid for, but the $8,000 that they're bilking from flat earthers makes it a flat earth thing. That's what the whole point is to make this obvious debacle a flat earth thing, to make flat earthers seem retarded. And I hate to use that word, but I'm sorry. That's just the common vernacular for this day and age, and to explain what their views are and what their plans are. So they didn't. This character, this stuntman character, whomever he is, didn't need that money to launch his rocket. It was already paid for, and he saw a billboard allegedly, and this made him decide to bilk flat earthers for money. And this whole story doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This is obviously controlled opposition who is working in conjunction with the mainstream media in order to put the final nail in the coffin of this truth movement in the public eye.
And then the other one, where he's going to go up to the Kármán line or attempt to, that's a couple of months after that.
Yeah, he's going to go to the Kármán line in a steam powered rocket, and you haven't even read a 4-page PDF of the logistics on this, yet you're promoting this to flat earthers to put their money towards. I mean, this is just absolutely insane. This is insanity.
But by putting our money into this thing now and making it about Flat Earth, it won't be about some guy trying to pull a big evil Knievel thing. This is going to be about Flat Earth. That's what the rocket launch will be about. And the guy he's been a Flat Earther for 2 years.
Yeah, I'm completely buying that story. I'm totally buying that he's been a flat earther for 2 years, and yet he waited until you and your minions put out a billboard before he decided to bilk flat earthers for money that he doesn't even need to launch the rocket. Yes. Yes. So you're telling me that he couldn't have put a sticker on the side of that rocket for free? He needs $8,000 to put a sticker on the side of that rocket? Even though it's already paid for and he's a flat earther? Yeah. Okay. I'm totally not buying this. Any true flat earther would put stickers all over that thing for free if this was legitimate. This is a hoax. This is going to be a false flag operation in order to vilify flat earthers. And by the way, if I haven't said this yet, it gets even worse. Well,
You know that it's going to be huge too. I mean, that kind of media is going to be pretty excellent if it's successful.
okay, so the most well-known, the most notorious globe Earth Illuminati shill is approving of, not only approving of, but saying that this will be excellent in the media if it succeeds. Um, does any other flat earther see any sort of red flags about Tim Osman thinking that this plan is excellent? Okay, if you guys don't see this yet, I don't know what to tell you, but let's just continue because it actually gets much worse and goes much deeper than this.
It'd be pretty excellent if it's successful, and it will be plastered with flat Earth.
Honestly, read between the lines there. This will be excellent if this is successful, and it will be plastered with flat Earth. Isn't that just excellent? That is excellent, isn't it? For Tim, for these Illuminati shills, yes, that will be excellent because it will marry flat earthers to a ridiculous, ill-contrived, poor excuse for a plan in the history books.
My only question is, I mean, I would have done it for about $2,000. How big is how big is this logo on it?
7 feet by 2 feet, and then on the launcher itself, 2 feet by 4 feet.
Do you know
So-
if it's going to be? Do you know if the cabin is going to be pressurized, and if not, if it is going to be a mask or oxygen system?
Good question. I think he's going to be on Jeranism's radio show at TFR tomorrow,
Okay.
and we're going to get more specific questions. I know that he's got I think they spent $100,000 on his suit.
So they spent $100,000 on the suit, and this flat earther needs $8,000 from flat earthers to put a flat earth sticker on the side of this thing that is destined to fail. Yeah.
Damn.
So
Oh boy. Fuck yeah.
yeah, the whole launch and everything is going to be like a $2 million operation. But if this thing next month goes very well, it'll be no problem at all to get that kind of funding. I'm going to actually personally go out there to Southern California and watch the rocket launch.
Yeah, I'm sure if this thing goes very well, you guys will all be very well funded by the Illuminati because you guys are Illuminati shills.
This is a
What
man.
kind of
a
what kind
man-
of guarantee do you have for? I mean, like, is there a fund that you show people? Look, this is how much money has come in, and this is how much is going out, or is it just kind of under the table?
This one's all going through GoFundMe, so it's public and everybody can see how much they put into it. And that's being managed by somebody else, not me. So
Of course not. Of course it's not being managed by you because that's like one of the rules of Illuminati shills. They get people within the movement to do most of their work for them. And regardless of where the money's coming from, this whole thing is obviously setting up to be a whole Psy-Op in order to discredit Flat Earth. And so this conversation where the well-known Illuminati globe Earth troll states things like this is a really great idea, then that ought to raise a few red flags for flat earthers.
if somebody was running a scam, it wouldn't work because I'm not touching that money.
Well, that's good. I mean,
Yeah.
these are all questions the doubters, the skeptics would have, and if that's legitimate and you're doing it that way, then I mean, like, I've actually come to like what you're doing. Obviously, with the Fepe and the trolling and stuff, I think that's actually beneficial for the Helios, the sphere, Earth, truth. But
Yes, Fepe and trolling is good for the blue pill philosophy, the sleepers, the people that have not yet awakened to this truth. That's exactly what Fepe is. It's something that makes absolutely no sense. It's actually quite hideous looking meme creature which is associated with flat earth by the followers of this meme only, and to any rational person memes plastered with this ridiculous thing with a widow's peak where basically you have an M at the top which means Mason, and they sort of code this in all of their artwork, which is a pattern of Masons. And Fepe is used as sort of an effigy or a meaningless slogan, if you will, that's used by all communist dictators in order to rally people behind something that has absolutely no meaning whatsoever to anyone outside the clique or the minions of this Illuminati shill.
um, as far as this rocket, I mean, there's, I can't even get anybody to spend $50 on geodetic surveying equipment just to verify if that's correct. So, I mean, this is a big deal. Like, if we can get decent enough cameras and stuff, and this actually works, like, this is going to be huge. So I applaud you on that.
I'm also thinking that even if, let's say he goes on this rocket launch in about 6 weeks or whatever, and he crashes, even if that happens, I think this thing will still be moved forward because the number of people who will be suddenly debating this thing, somebody's going to come out with the one shot, one kill, flat Earth is dead.
Wow, well, that sure was a mouthful. And he does go on to say, or if globe Earth is dead, but frankly, the globe spinning around an infinite theory of space-time as the result of the Big Bang Theory, held together by the theory of gravity, it is dead. The globe has been dead. The globe's been dead for a couple of years as far as any legitimate flat earther is concerned. And the fact that they just mentioned the idea of this man possibly dying in the crash just goes to show you exactly what I said earlier. I'm willing to bet now that I've made this video they won't claim that this man died in the crash, although don't hold me to it. I do think, however, that if enough people understand that this is a propaganda stunt, this is a false flag hoax stunt event, which is being coordinated by these Illuminati shills from both sides in order to ultimately put flat Earth in the media, but not the truth about flat Earth, which is, again, the lack of curvature and rotation of the Earth for starters. That's the truth about flat Earth, but what's going to happen is this effigy of flat Earth is going to be killed. So whether or not Mad Max dies in this thing is sort of irrelevant, as he said, because it's going to spark a debate in the public conscience, and that public conscience debate is going to start with a huge debacle attached to the idea of flat Earth. And so everybody's going to be coming at it from an angle of these idiots thought they'd get to the Kármán line in a steam rocket.
Suddenly debating this thing, somebody's going to come out with the one shot, one kill, flat Earth is dead, or globe is dead. Somebody's going to come up with something.
I don't think there is, though. It's just the physicality of our world, like just how it is, how small we are compared to it, and how far we can see.
I mean, do these people even hear themselves? If the Earth was a spinning sphere, we would definitely, absolutely know it without a doubt. The Earth is absolutely stationary, and this is 100% demonstrable. Anybody in the world can very easily prove that we're not spinning at 1,000 miles an hour near the equator. We're also not flying through space at 66,000 miles an hour. And in terms of how far we can see and how big it is quite irrelevant to the physics of it. Physics has to do with bodies in motion. Geometry has to do with the shape of objects, team Shillery. And so the geometry of it would be, observing and measuring the Earth. Literally, geometry etymologically means measure the Earth. However, the physics of the thing is really the most obvious point that none of these so-called flat earthers or globe Earth trolls talk about. They never talk about the lack of wild accelerations in motion due to the Earth allegedly traveling in multiple directions at the same time along varying degrees of arcs. Up to 500,000 miles an hour with the sun around the galaxy and millions of miles an hour with the galaxy through space. None of this motion exists, and it is 100% doable to prove this just by simple experiment. And for people to add such confusion to this and claim that it's reliant, this absolute self-evident truth is somehow reliant upon a hoax stunt event is just absurd. Although I can see why this team of Illuminati shills are congratulating one another because they think that this is somehow a brilliant idea in order to discredit Flat Earth.
And a lot of different factors that it basically makes it impossible to prove to a flat earther, unless they get shot up with Mad Mike or Max or whatever. I think that there might be some ad hoc fallacies that come, even if there's a complete sphere,
even if you can completely see the curvature, I think some of them will continue this for years and years to come.
I'll just mention quickly that Mad Mike is an MM name, and that of course means Mason Mason or 33. All you have to do is turn the M sideways. So there you have that. Russian vids, and let's just say hypothetically that he does get to the Kármán line in a steam rocket. I mean, that just sounds so absurd even saying those words. But let's just say he somehow makes it to the 62-mile high Kármán line in a steam rocket. And we're expected to believe that they will somehow find curvature at 62 miles when there is no curvature from 72 miles, according to the Go Fast rocket, which did use a fisheye lens, but there are certain frames of that sequence where you can clearly see absolutely no curvature in that amateur rocket launch footage, which I cannot play for fear of a copyright strike. However, this is just absolute nonsense, and any rational flat earther would have mentioned that it will not prove anything, and furthermore, it will never get to the Kármán line, ever. It won't even get halfway. It won't even get a quarter of the way. They'll get, up to 100,000 feet in their weather balloon, but anything beyond that is just absurd.
I'm worried about that. I'm like, what if this becomes like another cult or something where, like Hollow Earthers, that's been a cult that's been around for like 100 years. And it's like, there's no reason to buy into that at all.
What if this turns into a cult or something? So what if people who know the truth about the earth turn into a cult? Oh, you mean like the cult that you're running at your channel there? That sort of cult? No, flat earth can't possibly become a cult unless we allow Illuminati shills to gatekeep and run the narrative. And while there may not be any reason to buy into Hollow Earth at all, uh, there's no reason to buy into Flat Earth at all because it's the truth. You don't have to buy into the truth. The truth just is the truth. You have to buy into deceptions or theories, or you have to buy into scams like what you guys are trying to do, but you don't have to buy into the truth. That's a completely non sequitur statement unless you're looking at it from the context of Illuminati shills dealing with one another in public and sort of laughing amongst one another that nobody out there seems to notice that this obvious Illuminati shill, this at least 33rd degree Freemason who used to be a 32nd degree Freemason, of course, right? I don't think it goes from 31 to 33, so you have to be a 32nd degree Freemason first. And finally, while Hollow Earth may have been around for about 100 years, according to history, everyone knew the Earth was flat for all of history, except for leading up to about the 1500s when the first globes were made, and that's when it became extremely popular, even though it's a false lie. It's completely wrong. The Earth isn't a spinning globe, but that's when it really became popular. Now, of course, there were ancient Greeks who allegedly kicked the idea around a bit, but it wasn't even accepted amongst the ancient Greeks, the spinning globe Earth hypothesis. So, to claim that hollow Earth theory has been around for 100 years is a false equivalency. The Earth has been flat forever, and everybody knew it throughout history except for fairly recent in time.
Well,
But Admiral Byrd, go ahead,
has
Lewis.
been around longer than Flat Earth's been around longer than that. I feel. I've talked to this gentleman in Canada by the name of Tom something. He uses multiple last names on different platforms, so I'm not quite sure.
Of course he does. Of course he does, because that's what Illuminati shills do. Why would you bring anyone up in this Illuminati shill conversation unless you all were yourselves were Illuminati shills?
Of Tom something. He uses multiple last names on different platforms, so I'm not quite sure. But he has referenced entire groups of people, like entire fishermen small fishing villages in Canada where they just all go about their lives quietly believing the earth is flat. And they don't, and they were born into it. Their parents believed it was flat, and their parents believed it was flat, and they all teach their kids that it's flat, and they all just don't care that the rest of the world is wrong in their point of view, and they know that there'll be
to your
Oscars.
reality though, I mean, if you stay in the localized area, it can be
Right,
mapped
it's
out.
fine. Yeah, it's totally
Yeah.
fine to, and it doesn't hurt them in any way. But and then the steam rocket, like you have a, I mean, seeing the plans for that would be very nice, but I just pulled up the world record there for steam rocket. The height is it's not even a mile. That's the
Yeah.
world record. Like you have a
Yeah, I'll wait
lot of ground to cover.
until he's going to be on these different shows, and he's going to answer some specific questions and send this document. Because I was asking him about it, and he's like, just wait till you've read this because it's going to answer a lot.
So you're willing to stake your reputation, or more so, flat earthers' reputation in general, on something that you don't even know any of the details? Well, whose name are you going to use to say that you coordinated this event when it fails? Whose name are you going to use? You better not use mine. You know, this is just absurd. Of course, a steam rocket is not going to make it as high as they're claiming. I don't care what the platform is that you launch from. The barometric pressure when you get up to over 100,000 feet is not going to be sufficient to support rocket propulsion.
But
Is
there are
oh,
consequences for flat Earth belief that I think we should mention here. Is that if it's proved to be a globe, suddenly I'm not going to be a global warming denier anymore.
Wow, another loaded sentence. So, flat Earth belief, which I don't even know what that means. Flat Earth belief sounds like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. Globe Earth belief is something that I clearly understand because it is probably the greatest deception, well, one of the greatest deceptions possibly of all time. And to couple the idea of flat Earth with belief is not what flat earthers do, not genuine flat Earth proponents. Now, if it's proved to be a globe, is another just preposterous statement, but why would you marry this concept to global warming? So now you're going to try to lump in the global warming deniers with the flat Earth deniers in your little media stunt? Uh, wow.
I'm going to stop ripping on the man bear pig, and I'll stop advancing because there's a lot of stuff that comes out of this thing that it's going to fundamentally shift how I approach politics even.
So the man bear pig is an interesting reference for those of you who don't know. Man bear pig it comes from an episode of South Park, and Al Gore, the infamous politician who discovered and global warming or whatever and started taxing everybody for carbon emissions, which is just preposterous. But Man Bear Pig also references the occult reference behind this is the Cave of the Winds. Now, the Cave of the Winds has its own little esoteric backstory. There's a web page about the dark side of Colorado by Lizard. And there was a poem by John Denver about this instance. I won't read it, but I'm going to read from this article and I'll put a link in the description. Again, it's called The Dark Side of Colorado. And this is all going to be a quote. And it says, I moved to Colorado Springs a few months after the Columbine shooting. My then girlfriend's parents had a house there about 10 miles away from NORAD, right up against the Front Range. We only lived there for 9 months, but in that brief time I experienced enough to be unsettled by the energy there. If that sounds kind of new age, well, keep reading. Stephen King picked Boulder, Colorado as the settling for the good guys led by Mother Abigail in The Stand. I'm a big Stephen King fan, and he's one of those writers with a tremendous gift that allows him to tap into a source most aspiring writers don't have access to. Some people call it the muse, but it's much more than that. I believe there is a spiritual aspect to reality that we humans have very poor grasp of, though I don't think that it was always the case. I think the indigenous cultures have had a much healthier understanding of the spirit world. Surfing the old internet today, I came across the legend of Manitou Springs, which is the name of a little town next to Colorado Springs, where I worked as a dishwasher for those 9 months. The gist of the legend is that two hunters from different tribes came to the crystal springs to quench their thirst. One hunter had been successful and the other had not. Seeing this disparity, the unsuccessful hunter grew envious and picked a fight, which escalated to murder. Over the body stood the murderer, and no sooner was the deed of blood consummated than bitter remorse took possession of his mind, where before had reigned the fiercest passion and vindictive hate. With hands clasped to his forehead, he stood transfixed with horror, intently gazing on his victim whose head still remained immersed in the fountain. Mechanically, he dragged the body a few paces from the water, which, as soon as the head of the dead Indian was withdrawn, the Comanche saw suddenly and strangely disturbed. Bubbles sprang up from the bottom, and rising to the surface, escaped in a hissing gas. A thin vapory cloud arose, and gradually dissolving, displayed to the eyes of the trembling murderer the figure of an aged Indian whose long, snowy hair and venerable beard, blown aside by a gentle air from his breast, discovered the well-known totem of the great Waukaага, the father of the Comanche and Shoshone nation, whom the tradition of the tribe, handed down by skilful hieroglyphics, almost deified for the good actions and deeds of bravery this famous warrior had performed when on earth. Stretching out a war club towards the affrighted murderer, the figure thus addressed him: "Accursed of my tribe, this day thou hast severed the link between the mightiest nations of the world, while the blood of the brave Shoshone cries in the Manitou for vengeance. May the water of thy tribe be rank and bitter in their throats." Thus saying, and swinging his ponderous war club, made from the elk's horn, round his head, he dashed out the brains of the Comanche, who fell headlong into the spring, which from that day to the present moment remains rank and nauseous, so that even when half dead with thirst can one drink of the foul water of that spring. When I worked in Manitou Springs, I had a couple of strange experiences. One day after work, one of my co-workers took me on a hike up a ravine. He showed me a little trail that climbed the ravine wall to a ledge where there was what looked like a cave opening closed off by a metal door. The door was chained from the inside, which you could see through a hole where a knob should have been. It was creepy. My co-worker Nate was also the first person to clue me in to the reputation of Manitou Springs of being a hotbed for occult activity. In June of that year, I went home to visit family in Kansas City. When I came back, Nate informed me that the owner of the liquor store in Manitou, Robert Walter Dunn, had apparently murdered his 7-year-old daughter by slitting her throat. When the police arrived to this awful scene, this is what Robert told them. With his hands soaked in the blood of his 7-year-old daughter, Robert Walton Dunn turned to a police officer seconds before he was handcuffed and said, "I killed the devil. She was possessed and I killed the devil," according to court records. I found another piece about this area worth noting at Examiner.com titled "Unseen Conflict." Here's how the topography is described. Sitting at an elevation of over 6,000 feet above sea level, the city of Colorado Springs, Colorado faces the front range of the southern Rocky Mountains, staring up at Pikes Peak. It is the home of a strong defense industry, along with high-tech corporations and Christian ministries, such as Compassion International and Focus on the Family. It is an incredible, scenic, and beautiful city with mountain views from nearly any location. It's not surprising that the Springs, as it's often referred, is known for its family atmosphere. Beyond these demographics, the city's population are evidence of a deeper struggle. It is a struggle that is deeply embedded and that many choose not to openly acknowledge, and that others are not even aware of. One need not look very far to notice that Colorado Springs is a popular location for followers of New Age, pagan beliefs, and the occult. It is an area of intense spiritual warfare. Non Christian spirituality has a strong undercurrent in this area, along with various cults and followers of witchcraft. Just a few minutes from Colorado Springs is the small city of Manitou Springs. Although it's a beautiful place, it is believed that Manitou was at one time dedicated to Satan and is the Wiccan capital of the nation. Many people may call this foolishness, but it's interesting to note that the word Manitou means, quote, a supernatural being that controls nature or an object that possesses supernatural power, end quote. Continuing with this quote, within the quote, what got me thinking about all of this, of course, another Colorado tragedy, this time at Arapahoe High School, located just 12 miles from Columbine and 14 miles from the theater in Aurora, which is known for the Aurora Batman shooting. Carrying a shotgun, a machete, and a bandolier of ammunition, as well as a backpack with 3 incendiary devices, Carl Halverson Pearson entered at Arapahoe High School and launched 80 Seconds of Terror as he hunted his debate coach, who was also the school librarian. And I'll just put a little note here: if you buy into these false flag hoax events that seem to happen quite frequently in Colorado, don't they? New details emerged Saturday as authorities described the country's latest school shooting. As soon as he entered the building Friday, Pearson fired a round down the hallway and another from point blank range that critically injured one student. He fired a third round down the hall and entered the library, where he fired again and set off the Molotov cocktails, igniting bookshelves. As fire and smoke poured through the room, Pearson fired a fifth round and went back to the corner of the library, where he fired his last shot, allegedly killing himself. As an agnostic, this writer here believes there is more going on in this world than can be explained. That belief has led them down strange paths. High in the Rocky Mountains, they've often wondered what's hiding below. Some knowledge, though, comes with considerable risk. Stay tuned. End quote. And I guess it's probably worth a mention that South Park is one of those mainstream media productions where we've seen consistent predictive programming and just all sorts of really quite awful things for children to watch, and yet it's presented in a cartoon format. And so, you know, when did grown men, have conversations referencing cartoon characters and find that sort of thing funny? The only people who would know what Man Bear Pig is are people who watch South Park and people who know that one another like to watch South Park, because the reference would be lost on anyone who doesn't watch South Park.
Man, bear pig.
Nice, nice. I really like to hear that.
The only
Well, Admiral
reason,
Byrd talked about it too.
okay, what Flat Earth has going for it is the deception within the ISS and NASA. Unless you believe all that's true, and if you believe in the Apollo landing, if that's the case, yeah. But
What is this guy talking about? Seriously, what flat earther talks like this? Any normal, logical flat earther doesn't talk about belief. And no, the only thing flat earth has going for it is not the deception of the ISS. And if you believe in that, then, well, yeah, then the earth's obviously a globe. I mean, how ridiculous is this? Like, if you're going to have a conversation with people promoting flat Earth, you ought to tell them that the Earth doesn't have curvature and it's not spinning. You shouldn't encourage the trolls, the Illuminati shill trolls, which you're an Illuminati shill too, so of course you're going to talk about ridiculous red herring arguments instead of the actual truth. But hopefully you guys can see that no actual flat Earth proponent talks like this.
I'll reconsider the Apollo landing if it's shown to be a ball and it looks like what we'd expect it to look like.
Hey, IPS, I got.
Well, I don't. Real quick, Ed, I don't think that you really need to examine. I mean, maybe you should examine your paradigms and your beliefs afterwards, but I don't think that necessarily it makes global warming true once you figure out that it is a globe.
Change your paradigm afterwards. After what? After this ridiculous stunt? Uh, this doesn't add up whatsoever. It really doesn't. I mean, I really can't say much more.
You know. Go ahead, Ed.
True. That's actually a good point. Well, it relates in this way. When you look at what flat Earth actually means versus the globe, with the globe, the governments of the world can make the case for increased regulation and taxation on the grounds that they have to save the planet because of this phenomenon of global warming. But no globe, no global warming.
Pointing out the ridiculous statements this person is making is getting quite tiresome, although apparently myself and just a few other people are the only ones that are noticing this stuff. But no globe, no global warming is just an absurd statement. Of course, if the Earth is flat, then it couldn't be a globe, but there could technically be system-wide, changes in the average overall temperature, whether the Earth is spherical or whether it's flat, which indeed it is. However, measurable trends in temperature are not something that are exclusive to either a sphere or a flat Earth, and to assume that that is somehow exclusive to a sphere or flat Earth is further preposterous. The fact that the Earth is indeed a stationary plane and we may be seeing some temperature rises, although global warming appears to be a hoax, if you watch the news from about 30 or maybe 40 years ago, they were saying that we were definitely on a trend for a new ice age. And in the last 20 years, of course, they say we're on a definite trend for global warming. And I'm sure that the phenomenon of chemtrails, which is yet again another hoax, another deception, chemtrails are indeed. That may do something, however, to change the climate overall. However, the climate can trend in different directions based on a lot of different factors, and that's completely not exclusive to the Earth being a sphere or being flat. You can have system-wide overall average temperature changes of the water and the sea and of the air.
But if there's globe and no global warming still, and it's still a hoax to give us carbon taxes and all this nonsense, then isn't that still a viable conspiracy or agenda?
Well, one of the reasons why I can't take it seriously now is that like Al Gore's satellite, GoreSat, the Discover, that's a weather satellite. That's been up there for so long. And now that I don't believe in it, I don't believe in any of its data. But if the world's shown to be a spinning ball, I'll be like, well, maybe I was wrong about dismissing his information.
I'm terribly sorry, but no actual flat earther talks like that. We know for a fact that satellites don't exist, and everything that has to do with space is fake. You can't orbit, you can't go up there and float around. That is a lie pushed in your brain since you were a child by the likes of NASA, as well as Star Wars, Star Trek, Lost in Space, and every other show that you've seen with little fake astronauts in space, and all of the different world governments who are all members of the Antarctic Treaty, by the way, who claim to go into space and float around and play ping pong with water. The theory of space-time doesn't actually exist. That is all a lie. And so any flat earther saying, if it's proven to be a globe, then I can rely on this satellite data doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And we can rely on data, but we can't rely on any sort of data coming from anyone claiming to have a satellite. And if you're somehow tricked into believing the Earth is a spinning sphere again, even though no true flat earther would ever reserve the possibility for the Earth being a spinning sphere, because we have taken this really quite personal and difficult journey to the startling conclusion that the Earth is absolutely not a spinning sphere, and there are simply no reservations in terms of, well, perhaps satellite data will prove global warming once we prove the Earth is a sphere in the public eye, of course. You're not going to prove anything to actual flat earthers, but you're going to try to do some pretty serious damage to the reputation of flat earthers in general by this just ridiculous stunt that you Illuminati shills are planning.
You guys haven't heard the latest Al Gore stuff then, apparently, since you're not referencing it.
Huh, isn't that a little bit of a anecdotal confirmation of my theory that these guys are all referencing things that they've discussed? They're all up on what each other are referencing. Not a big surprise.
Al Gore claimed that he's on a mission from God. I'm not joking. Look it up. He did that like a week ago. That global warming, he was told by God to fucking do global warming. I'm not joking.
Well, I'm the one who called him a doomsayer, advancing a new version of the second coming where instead of God punishing sin, God's punishing pollution. Instead of original sin, you have a carbon footprint, and that he is in fact selling indulgences through the cap and tax program. So
If anyone just paid attention to what this so-called flat earther just said, he insinuated that he had something to do with Al Gore pushing this narrative that he's like the second coming. Now, either this person is having delusions of grandeur, or they are an architect of social constructs which the Illuminati ends up using to control the narrative of the mainstream, which everybody or 90% of the world believes, hook, line, sinker, and the entire fisherman's boot.
Al Gore claimed that he's on a mission from God. I'm not joking. Look it up. He did that like a week ago. That global warming, he was told by God to fucking do global warming. I'm not joking. Well, I'm the one who called him a doomsayer, advancing a new version of the second coming where instead of God punishing sin, God's punishing pollution. Instead of original sin, you have a carbon footprint, and that he is in fact selling indulgences through the cap and tax program. So
yeah, it's absolutely, to me, global warming is a Jesuit construct, has nothing to do with science or saving the planet.
Of course it is, and you would know that because you are a Jesuit Illuminati shill.
yeah, it's absolutely, to me, global warming is a Jesuit construct, has nothing to do with science or saving the planet.
Right. Hey,
Unless I'm wrong, which we'll know in 5 months.
I got
a question about this rocket launch, though, IPS. Like a serious question. Do you know if there's any budget allotted for specific cameras? Like, say, like if you had like 15 hundo, like pushed aside for like a Canon 70D Mark II with like, I don't know, like a 250 to 600 millimeter zoom. Just curious. I know that's a pretty fucking specific thing, but
no, I barraged questions like this, and he said that he'll answer them when he's on these longer talk show formats. Right. And he is going to have answers for that because all I wanted to know was, though, are you going to use a GoPro? And he said no. He's totally against using GoPro now.
Well, at least you asked him that. Did you ask him, was he on his meds when he decided to take a steam rocket to the Kármán line?
Right.
He knows that
my concern for that is that I would like to see comparable inference from a third-party perspective looking at this rocket going up into the air and the arc that is proposed as being either Coriolis force or because gravity's pulling it back down. That's what I'm curious about.
He's not going into orbit, though.
Good call.
He's not going into orbit. That's why we need a parabolic maneuver.
Right, so I'm curious about similar characteristics in both fucking rockets. I'm serious about this here. Like I'm being dead serious. So a third-party camera looking up and having the ability to zoom in and stay on there, that is important to me. I make those arguments a lot.
Mr. B, you don't want zoom though, do you? I mean, you want the maximum field of view, don't you? I don't know if he's still here. I don't think zoom though.
He took a smoke break.
No, you'd want zoom because if you have like a 50 millimeter zoom length or something like that, eventually something's gonna shrink so far down that it's only gonna be like 1 pixel big, and then it'll disappear. But if you have zoom, you can bring that back into full view. You know what I mean?
So I'm just Go ahead.
he's going to give an explanation of his trajectory and the flight time, and he said it's only like 32 minutes. But here's the crazy thing: we're going to find out when we see his plans. Is he accounting for the Coriolis effect or the rotation of the Earth or whatever?
Right. And I'm just asking that, not necessarily asking if you know per se, but putting a bug in the ear.
Well, he's not going north or south, first of all, and he's also leaving from the Earth, which he's going to have that reference frame. So.
Right, but still, what I'm asking is if there's going to be a video from a third-person perspective looking at it going up and zooming in. Mainly, really, is all it is. And if there isn't a plan for it, or right, if you don't know if there's a plan for it, or I'm really just trying to put a bug in the ear.
Yes, of course. They're going to send a cameraman up to 100,000 feet. Of course not. They are probably going to have cameras attached to the vessel. But you're certainly not going to be able to have a cameraman on the ground that sees something that's over 100,000 feet before it even takes off with its steam rocket.
Really, more than anything, and maybe, who knows? That would be I think that would be a beneficial thing for everyone.
I got equipment. I'll come out with IPS. Maybe we'll have a road trip. Fucking Osmans going to Cali, dude.
That sounded really creepy. So the Osmonds are going to go on a road trip. Wow, I wonder what the Osmonds are going to do on that road trip.
I'm down, dude. I'm down.
Well, I'm certainly going this next launch in August. I'm going to go there in person. And yeah, you said bug in the ear, and I'll definitely make sure, because we don't want to leave any room for doubt. I want this to be the final nail in the coffin of this debate, one way or the other. I want this to be the final nail in the coffin of this debate.
Right. Okay.
Nice.
That's what's up.
So August is the big one from launching from California?
No, that's not what's up. This stupid hoax event is not going to be the final nail in the coffin of anything unless flat earthers actually allow this to happen in our name. I submit that flat earthers should unite against putting any sort of sticker on such a cockamamie, half-baked plan.
Yep. No, August is the one that's the world record for a steam-powered rocket or whatever with the flat Earth sign on it. The big one will be a couple of months after that.
Ah, gotcha. And they're both from Cali?
Yeah, they're both going to be launching from the same place. I think it's called Amboy, California.
What's the date in August?
I think it's going to be a Tuesday or a Wednesday, so it's going to be 3rd or the 4th or the 5th.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll get more information soon. I've been on the phone with him every couple of days, and I'm getting him in touch with Jaronism and Glowbusters and everybody else who could possibly get him on. And something else too, for the future reference here, because we have a billboard going up in a minute in Tulsa, and so I have to go cover that. But all the billboards and all these different events, like we have a banner being pulled by a plane that says the Earth is flat and it's going to go over the beach right before the fireworks go off.
That's a brilliant idea. Brilliant idea. It'll get people to look at flat Earth possibly, and then they will find ridiculous red herring arguments about it brought to you by the likes of the Flat Earth Society, and do no further research than that, because that's what most people do. Perhaps it will plant some seeds of truth into some people. However, if they're led down this rabbit trail to nowhere and put their faith in some ridiculous stunts instead of actually looking at the evidence, which involves the complete lack of curvature and motion of the Earth, then what good has it actually done?
Okay, all these things are intended to do one thing: get people talking about it, because the more people know about it, the more likely it is we're going to come to a conclusion. And I want to make this issue a little bigger than it was.
If you don't see the plan by now, let me spell it out. He wants to get a bunch of people talking about flat Earth in the media. Unless they're really good researchers, they're going to have to wade through a bunch of nonsense before they get to some actual, real good information proving the Earth to be a stationary plane. It is very difficult to find good information on this topic for a number of reasons. We won't get into those reasons, but you can speculate on that as you will. But he's obviously saying that he wants to get people looking at this so that when this thing collapses that he's orchestrating with the media and this alleged stuntman, then the more people are going to be laughing at flat earthers for a failed event, which is a hoax and a false flag to begin with. And I submit that flat earth should have nothing to do with any of these events, especially since they're being orchestrated by Illuminati shills. And, I know that term gets thrown around a lot pretty much since day one by some of the biggest names in flat earth for some reason, but it seems as if it's a cry wolf sort of mechanism to make actual pointing out of Illuminati shills within the so-called flat earth movement seem to be just paranoia, theory, and of course that's the whole plan of the, if you're familiar with the analogy of the boy who cried wolf, hopefully that is the case.
Than it's been ever, actually. And I think the rocket will make this thing a big topic. And then at that point, the right minds will be looking into it because there will be a bounty on the head of whoever solves this debate. I mean, on the globe. It's like the person who kills flat Earth is going to be well known.
Indeed, I think it appears you are going for that. You want to be the person known for killing flat Earth. And the person who saves flat Earth, what does that even mean? Kills flat Earth or saves flat Earth? The Earth is mother effing flat, and it's stationary. It's not spinning around on an axis either. So there is no killing flat Earth or saving flat Earth. This isn't a black and white issue like you Freemasons tend to put it. Everything is not Boaz and Jachin. Everything is not black and white. The earth is flat, and that's definitely black and white. It's not a spinning sphere. But to say that the truth can somehow be killed or saved is preposterous, especially when coming from a self-proclaimed flat earther who is not a flat earther but is actually an Illuminati shill.
The person who saves flat Earth and kills the globe is going to be well known. So there's some kind of an incentive here, if you know what I mean.
No, I think it's a double-edged sword, and
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
no, it's a good thing though, because really, if you bring in people that could possibly believe in the flat Earth, they might believe it. That's fine. But you're also going to bring in, like, I've talked to people that are like very scientific minded, and I'm like, hey, dude, go check out Globusters this weekend, and then just call me or whatever. And so when we have more people that are scientifically minded in this debate, it is beneficial for the truth, because we are dealing with the conspiracy crowd for the most part here, and we don't have many PhDs or people in fields that come on and actually talk to flat earthers.
That is just abject nonsense. There are plenty of people who are credentialed in all sorts of things coming forward as flat earthers. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And we don't need some degree-toting parrot to come along and tell us the earth isn't flat some more. We've all heard that our entire lives. It's nonsense. And the people who do look at flat earth and realize that it is true are not believed. And frankly, it doesn't have anything to do with belief. You guys are throwing this word belief around as if it means something. What we believe is irrelevant. What we can prove and discern through logic, measurement, and reason is what the flat earth movement is about. It has nothing to do with belief.
So maybe we will have more of that.
Well,
Maybe we will see some progression here.
I think the tendency for people who want to believe in something and it to be right and thereby never change, and if they do change, it means they were wrong and then it's inferior, and some people's pride I don't think will allow for that. And I think flat earth has a very high preponderance of that, and the evidence for that is that there simply are people with PhDs in education who've come out and talked against the flat earth, and they get called defamed and slandered for basically being shills or brainwashed by the system.
That is because anyone who believes they live stuck to the side of a spinning sphere in outer space has been 100% certainly brainwashed by the system. Anyone who continues along that line after being confronted with very clear and concise evidence that what they were sold as a bill of goods of truth and science as a toddler, as a gullible toddler, happens to be a complete fallacy, a 100% lie, then don't change their minds, are either stuck within cognitive dissonance and will revert to their programming, or they are a globe earth troll. There's no other options. Either they're a globe earth troll or they haven't looked at this. Once a rational person looks at this, it is so obvious that we were deceived as young children about the spinning globe theory that doesn't exist, only exists in your imagination if you even believe in the spinning globe. But regardless of what you or anyone else believes, the Earth is definitely, verifiably a stationary plane, and certainly not a spinning sphere.
And that the whole conspiracy of like maybe IPS, you don't have the same views as all the flat earthers. I'm sure you don't, especially when it comes to the conspiracy of the global powers at large that would be conspiring to control the masses.
That is a very astute observation. Very astute. His beliefs on the powers that may or may not be controlling various causes, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, his views on the Illuminati are different because he's in the Illuminati. He comes right out and tells you that. He puts it on his shirt. He tells everybody he's a practicing witch. We haven't even got to that part yet. Let's just keep going.
But I think there's just no matter what the conclusion is, you said one way or the other we'll know. And what happens when you continue to say it's flat and we say, no, we disagree with what was seen? What happens then?
Right, I know what you
Then
mean.
you've
There's
just gotten a whole
tendency-
bunch more publicity. That's all that's happened. You would have
they
just
call
gotten
the
more
ex-
publicity.
They'll call the experts shills or liars. Like you say, you have astronauts who are supposedly doing what they're doing and they're qualified, but they're just discredited automatically. So that is an obstacle. And my point here is that it's not going to be a flat earther that figures this thing out. Like I never thought it would be. Just because we figured this out doesn't mean we're experts on cartography. I just figure we draw attention to it and let the people who have the know-how move in. But where's the incentive? And I think one of the incentives that I might reach out to, because I'm going to be reaching out to different people to contribute to this thing, I'm going to say, hey, don't you want to be the geologist who brought this thing to a halt, or the philosopher, or the astrophysicist? This is a good way to make your name if you want to be attached to this event.
Yeah, this is a great way to make your name in the controlled opposition hoax stunt event coordinated by Illuminati shills.
Well, why wouldn't you release your real name then if you want to be attached to it?
I don't. After July, I'm kind of going back into ghostwriting full time.
Ah, so you're just a part-time flat earther using fake names and stirring up all kinds of drama and just setting up absolute nonsense as somehow being definitive proof one way or the other of flat earth theory or belief. And yeah, totally not transparent whatsoever there, Mr. Illuminati shill.
Nice.
I don't. So what is this experience for you? Why are you doing it? If it's not your main objective in life, I suppose.
There's a number of reasons, and I'd probably write about that quite a bit, but I think a lot of it is I've always studied conspiracies,
Where do you write about that? In the Masonic Lodge's records?
and I've always debunked them on my own, but when it came to psyops and seeing how the media manipulates minds, I was like, okay, this is bigger than any of the conspiracy. This is about state-controlled propaganda influencing how the public sees the world. So when I came into Flat Earth, I was like, it can't be that bad. But apparently it seems to be. And I want to find out if it's that bad. Are we dealing with some hardcore propaganda convincing us that the world is, in fact, a spinning ball? Or is it? Like, I'm just trying to figure out if it's true or not.
Yeah. Yeah, because flat earthers can't really figure out if this is true or not. We need some Illuminati shill to pretend to launch a steam rocket to the Carmen line. That's exactly what we need to prove this thing one way or another. Give me a break.
In ghostwriting, are you anonymous in that as well?
I use different names depending on what I'm writing about. Like I
So
did
you
a
are.
book on, like for example, there's a book
So
called.
it's not your real name when you ghostwrite, is it? At any point?
His real name is known. I mean, he made a few mistakes, and that's fine. He's not exactly trying to be exactly anonymous. He just, I mean, you have nom de plumes, right? I mean,
Yes, of course. That's the whole concept of ghostwriting. It's writing either under a pseudonym or usually nowadays it's writing sort of as a freelance contractor that will be published under someone else's name for some sort of an agreed upon sum or rate. And so, yeah, obviously a ghostwriter is going to have a pseudonym or be using different names, but the fact that the Globe Earth shill is using the phrase nom de plumes is indeed pretty interesting because, of course, you know, Freemasons like to talk to one another in Latin. They think it makes them smarter than everyone because they know something that other people don't. They really are very vain and high on themselves, these Freemasonic Illuminati shills. But so for a little bit of context in terms of nom de plume, which is often used by Freemasons to further their agendas or use different names in order to either discredit people or spread a false narrative so as not to be incriminated as a liar and that sort of thing. A little bit about Brother Enoch from the Illuminati book by Albert Mackey, Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. Brother Enoch, the French expression is Frère Enoch, evidently the nom de plume or pen name of a French writer and the inventor of a Masonic rite. He published at Liège in 1773 two works, first being La Vraie Franc-Maçon, meaning the true Freemason, in 276 pages, and the second instance was Les Lettres Manphoniques pour servir de soup payment of Ra Franc-Maçon, or Masonic letters supplementing the true Freemason. The design of the former of these works was given an account of the origin and object of Freemasonry, a description of all the degrees, and an answer to the objections urged against the institution. The historical theories of Frere Enoch were exceedingly fanciful and wholly untenable. Thus he asserts that in the year 814, Louis the Fair of France, being flattered by the fidelity and devotion of the operative Masons, organized them into a society of 4 degrees, granting the masters the privilege of wearing swords in the lodge, a custom still continued in French lodges, and having been received into the order himself, accepted the Grand Mastership on the festival of St. John the Evangelist in the year 814. Other equally extravagant opinions make his book rather a source of amusement than of instruction. His definition of Freemasonry is, however, good. He says that it is a, quote, a holy and religious society of men who are friends, which has for its fruition discretion, for its object the service of God, fidelity to the sovereign, and love of our neighbor, and for its doctrine the erection of an allegorical building dedicated to the virtues, which it teaches with certain signs of recognition. So dissecting that last part a bit, because it is very appropriate, I think, for this video, that Freemasonry is a holy and religious society of men who are friends, which has for its fruition, or for its own personal benefit, it has discretion, which means they behave in secret. For its object, or for that which they use to fool people, the service of God, fidelity to the sovereign, and love of their neighbors. And for its doctrine, or what they preach, not really what they do, but their doctrine is the erection of an allegorical building dedicated to the virtues, And again, those virtues would be their sort of cover, which it teaches, or the Freemasonic Lodges teaches, with certain signs of recognition. So, in other words, they sort of go through the motions of these virtues, but they don't actually practice what they preach. It's very clear what Albert Mackey, one of the prolific Freemasonic writers of old, has to say about Freemasonry. So, take it from the horse's mouth. So, what exactly are the virtues of Freemasonry? Well, a little bit of digging, and this comes from the Grand Texas Lodge. It talks about the four cardinal virtues, so I would imagine that these Freemasons have other so-called virtues, and I just wonder, what these virtues are that Mackey speaks of in his book here, the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. So, this is quoting again from the Grand Texas Lodge, quote, in the entered apprentice degree, the new brother is introduced to the four cardinal virtues during the close of the explanatory lecture. These virtues are temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice, and are very briefly explained to the new entered apprentice. Unfortunately, these virtues have no connection to the rite of initiation experienced by the new Mason, and the lecture does little to clarify their introduction at this time. From an esoteric standpoint, one must go to great lengths to manipulate these virtues to make a connection to the ritual. Up to at least 1750, none of the early Masonic manuscripts or ritual exposures contains any reference to the four cardinal virtues. Coyle's Masonic Encyclopedia states, quote, it is probable that this peculiar part of the lectures goes back beyond the dawn of symbolic Masonry, and that what we have is a distorted remnant of a much more meaningful symbolism, or has been built up in the modern times out of a brief and unimportant part of the old pre-Grand Lodge working, end quote. Continuing on with the quote from Grand Texas Lodge, in addition, one must realize that the Masonic ritual is a combination of many ideas that have come from the distant past and woven into a ritual. Over time, ideas have been added, removed, or merged with other concepts to form the current Masonic ritual. Based on the evidence, the cardinal virtues were not added to the Masonic ritual until after the middle of the 18th century. Coyle's Masonic Encyclopedia suggests that the cardinal virtues were, quote, taken from the Catholic Church, which derived from Plato, and to which the Church had added the three theological virtues, faith, hope, charity, and which Freemasonry also borrowed, end quote. Continuing on with the quote from the Grand Texas Lodge of Freemasonry, in any event, the cardinal virtues have intrinsic value to the Mason and are certainly essential to Freemasonry. They can stand on their own within the ritual without any direct connection to the initiatic experience or to Masonic symbolism. If you're not familiar with the initiation rites of Freemasonry, it's basically a blood oath. The Freemason swears essentially to secrecy, or they will be killed in excruciating and painful manners that get more and more bizarre as they progress up the degrees. So back to the quote anyway. The Texas Monitor of the Lodge provides an explanation of each of the four virtues. So this goes into a little bit more detail what they mean by temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. Temperance is that due restraint upon our affections and passions which renders the body tame and governable, and frees the mind from the allurements of vice. This virtue should be the constant practice of every Mason, as he is thereby taught to avoid excess, or the contracting of any licentious or vicious habit, the indulgence of which might lead him to disclose some of those valuable secrets which he has promised to conceal and never reveal, and which would consequently subject him to the contempt and detestation of all good Masons. Temperance represents restraint. The Mason must control his passions and desires. He must practice restraint in all things and avoid excess. He must exercise caution in his action, speech, thought, feeling, judgment, and life. And breaking away from the quote a bit, this is why when the known globe Earth troll was busted at the Denver Flat Earth party, he claimed that he owns 3 houses of pot plants, and he literally pretends to smoke pot on his little silly podcast. He'll say, "Oh, let me light this real quick," and he'll go, and then that's the last you'll hear him smoke of anything or pretend to smoke of anything for like 20 minutes later, where he will then pretend not to light but to smoke whatever he was pretending to smoke before. He also claimed when he was outed at the Denver Flat Earth meeting that was absolutely not a coincidence that his good friend and Freemasonic Illuminati shill on the other side, on the flat Earth side, with the silly penguins. That was absolutely just a big coincidence, and nobody will ever figure out that they actually colluded for that ahead of time. Anyway, back to this quote. Fortitude is that noble and steady purpose of mind whereby we are enabled to undergo any pain, peril, or danger when prudently deemed expedient. So just breaking that first quote apart a little bit, it goes to show that Freemasons will do pretty much anything to deceive people and even put themselves into, the seeming predicament of danger or seemingly vicarious positions, but indeed they maintain their fortitude and focus on the ultimate plan of the lodge. Now, continuing with the quote, this virtue is equally distant from rashness and cowardice, and, like the former, should be deeply impressed upon the mind of every Mason, as a safeguard against any illegal attack that may be made, by force or otherwise, to extort from him any of those valuable secrets with which he has been so solemnly entrusted, and which were emblematically represented upon his first admission into the lodge, and that's when they've got their whole pant leg rolled up with a noose around their neck, if I'm not mistaken. Courage is another name for fortitude. For the Mason, fortitude symbolizes more than physical courage. It also represents moral courage. The Mason must have the strength and ability to make a decision based upon his own moral convictions and stick to it regardless of the consequences. The Mason must exhibit the highest moral and ethical principles in his life and stand by those principles when society looks unfavorably upon those principles. Prudence teaches Masons to regulate their lives and actions agreeably to the dictate of reason, and is that habit by which they wisely judge and prudently determine on all things relative to their present as well as their future happiness. This virtue should be the peculiar characteristic of every Mason, not only for the government of his conduct while in the lodge, but also when abroad in the world. It should be particularly attended to in all strange and mixed companies, never to let fall the least sign, token, or word, whereby the secrets of Masonry might be unlawfully obtained. In its most comprehensive sense, prudence implies not only caution, but also the ability to judge in advance the probable consequences of one's actions. It also symbolizes wisdom in the conduct of one's activities. Wisdom of mind and soul comes from thought, study, and circumspection. It brings the Mason closer to God. And again, their god, they learn at the 32nd and 33rd degrees, is actually Jabulon. They don't believe in any sort of actual, well, they believe in the grand architect of the universe, but it's more akin to something like Baal or the Baphomet than it is what any normal person would consider as God, the creator. Continuing with the quote, prudence reminds the Mason to reflect upon the moral and social consequences of his activities and his relationship to his Creator. Justice is that standard or boundary of right which enables us to render to every man his just due without distinction. This virtue is not only consistent with divine and human laws, but is the very cement and support of civil society, and as justice in a great measure constitutes the real good man, so should it be the invariable practice of every Mason never to deviate from the minutest principles thereof. Justice symbolizes equality for the Mason. The Mason should govern his own actions, have them judged openly, and his conduct towards others should be without deception. When they're talking about others, obviously they're talking about people who are not in their lodge or are not, brothers or other Masons. They're talking about others that are people that are outside of their little bizarre ritualistic clique. That is obviously true because by nature they're being deceptive. Resuming the quote, he should undertake actions because he desires and not because he is forced to. His actions should be unselfish and self-sacrificing, which this is all very deceptive the way that they write about their virtues because it already clearly stated in the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry by Mackey, which I quoted earlier, that their virtues are merely a doctrine. It's something that they preach, they got it from the Catholic Church, and they don't actually live by these, but they pretend to. So it's really no wonder that they would have well, they do have some hidden messaging if you read between the lines on these so-called virtues. But again, this is not for the Masons to actually practice. It's for the Masons to outwardly display. But again, that is just a facade because they are by nature deceptive. That last one, Justice, says that they should be without deception, but they swear an oath to never reveal the lodge secrets, and that at the very core means to be deceptive. So anyone who becomes a Freemason and doesn't realize this, it's because they are misled about these virtues being actual practices of Freemasons as opposed to the doctrines. And so when you have lower level Freemasons that are 100% innocent of any sort of malfeasance or plotting to take over the world or plotting to kill flat Earth, you do have higher level Masons that are aware that these virtues are nothing more than a clever disguise for their actual clandestine activity.
Be exactly anonymous. I mean, you have nom de plumes, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
kind of
with
what writers
ghostwriting,
do.
yeah, with ghostwriting, it goes under the name of the published author, whoever's the public face of it, and then generally in the forward or whatever, in the intro, they'll say, for so-and-so. They'll give you some sort of a thank you. But
nobody knows your real name, so that's sort of irrelevant.
no, when I do that, I sell the work, and I don't have any attachment to it after that. But I like that life better. I like being quiet and alone. This has just been a strange diversion I didn't plan on.
Yeah, very, very funny stuff there. Very funny. Flat Earth is not a strange diversion. How can the truth be a strange diversion? What sort of flat Earth proponent talks like this? What sort of flat Earth proponent actually gets along with the most well-known, infamous globe Earth troll like this guy? I mean, come on, give me a break, people.
A strange diversion I didn't plan on.
No,
You seem kind of you seem like the kind of a homebody, but like well read and I don't know. I think that you excel at things that you're interested in, and I do the same.
I gotta tell you guys, I mean, this guy here, this flat earther, is gotten more compliments from the globe earth troll here, the most well-known globe earth troll in the world. He's gotten more compliments than I've ever heard him say in ever. Not that I sit around listening to these people much, but for a flat earther to get so many compliments from Timio, give me a break, people. You've got to see through this, right?
And I don't know. I think that you excel at things that you're interested in, and I do the same. And I guess we're both kind of interested in the conspiracy and the.
You're both kind of interested in the conspiracy? First of all, Flat Earth isn't a conspiracy. It's not a theory either. It happens to be the truth, and the truth cannot be a theory. And I wouldn't really call dedicating your entire life for at least the last 2 years, Timio, to trolling flat earthers kind of interested in conspiracies, it seems like you are extremely obsessed with discrediting flat earthers, and that's the way that you've been for the last at least 2 years in terms of your public persona, that where you don't even use your real name. So, if there are any actual flat earthers out there who believe it's not at least sorta odd that Timio, the biggest globe earth troll in the world, is not only agreeing with, but going out of his way to give multiple compliments to this so called flat earther. I mean, just think about this for 10 seconds, people, and answer the question to yourself. Do you trust this situation here at all?
I think that you excel at things that you're interested in, and I do the same. And I guess we're both kind of interested in the conspiracy and the sociology and the psychology of this crowd and such. So I understand where you're coming from, but I just think that you're obviously misled with the flat Earth idea, but you're actually doing something about it. So I really don't have a problem with it.
Oh, yeah, that was a very thinly veiled threat that nobody would ever catch on to. So you say you're misled about your belief in flat Earth, essentially, but that you think what he's doing is great because he's actually doing something about it. So this is as if to say that all of the thousands and thousands of people who have been putting their necks on the line, ruining their relationships, trying to promote flat Earth within their own inner circles, have somehow not been doing anything but putting up a billboard which attracts a daredevil who is going to do some ridiculous fabricated hoax event is somehow doing something about flat earth, funneling people into this ridiculous notion that spreading memes with penguins, which nobody else knows what they mean but a specific cross section of flat earthers in air quotes, is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Hopefully, this will be the nail in the coffin. I think if it does show curvature, there will be a lot that say "fuck this" basically. But I think that this is going to be a little niche group, a little cottage industry for years to come, really.
If it does show curvature. That's the only time I've really heard Timio mention curvature in this conversation, or really anyone mention curvature in this conversation. But again, we don't need to send a steam rocket to the Kármán line uh, in order to prove the lack of inverse square curvature to the Earth. The lack of curvature has been proven with or without this cockamamie scheme. The lack of axial rotation or orbital motion of the Earth has also been disproven, completely independent of this cockamamie scheme.
Well, if I'm convinced by the results of this thing that it's a spinning ball, I'll probably do a 180 and I'll just go full bore Globy and I'll just be like, hey, this is bullshit.
No, really, if it proves a spinning ball, you'll do this, that, and the other. What kind of a flat earther says this thing? Anybody that's following this guy, I hope that you really understand how full of it he really is. And if you don't see through this by now, I doubt you ever will. But it still gets even worse.
Let's stop this. But if you did set up a crowdfund account to like get some geodesy equipment and do some experiments, I would totally back it. Like if you wanted to, or if you know someone who does it, I would totally be interested in learning more about that and seeing how it may or may not make the case as well.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I'll be in touch about it.
Why in the world, again, would anyone be promoting flat Earth if they felt there needed to be a case made for it? The case has been made. The Earth isn't a spinning sphere. All flat earthers know this without any sort of question or doubt whatsoever. And to say that it needs a case to be made is admitting that there is no proof of the flat stationary Earth, which is patently absurd and proves to me that this person has nothing to do with the actual grassroots flat earth truth awakening. And I should quickly mention, this is regardless of how this person may or may not act when he's on certain venues. What counts is his intentions, and what counts is what he says to his fellow Illuminati shills.
I don't think I would take any of the money, but I think that I might actually do some experiments myself.
Wow, Timio, the globe Earth troll who pretends to have all this proof for a spinning sphere Earth, might actually do some experiments for himself. Well, isn't that just dandy?
I was actually on a mountain in Boulder not too long ago with the theodolite doing the eye level test and whatnot. So I might do that on my own actually, just
Well,
for.
Ooh, the eye level test using a theodolite. You mean the eye level test using convex lenses which cause the horizon to appear to drop in the viewfinder. However, that has to do with the shape of the lens as well as the shape of the atmosphere and has nothing to do with the shape of the Earth.
on one note before I go here, it's not really about the money, but it's about every person who invests suddenly has an interest in the outcome. And that's kind of my angle. Like, I would rather have 100 people donate 20 bucks a piece to this rocket than have one big donor step in.
Well, actually, you'd need 100 people to donate $78 apiece to get the nearly 8,000 that you're looking for. But so even say you get 200 people to do it. Yes, you want more people invested in this so that when it fails, they will be all that more disheartened by the ridiculous flat earth movement that they spent their money on and it turned out to be an abject failure, just as it's planned to be by the controlled opposition working with the media to discredit flat earth using this preposterous steam rocket jump.
Because I want all these people invested in it, involved in it, because we want this thing to go viral, because it's all about getting people to talk about this issue.
Do you hear that, folks? The Illuminati wants this issue to go viral so that people will start talking about it, so that it can be discredited by the media, so that the people talking about their beliefs and theories will be completely and utterly the laughingstock of the world when this ridiculous and preposterous flat earth rocket jump to the Kármán line using a steam rocket fails.
And that is for what? To get more people, like the quantitative kind of thing, or is it that you want the qualitative people that actually know to come into this arena and start giving more better evidences than these laymen, like
It's
me?
both.
Okay, so let's just break that down a little bit. Basically, what Timio is asking the Flat Earth shill is whether he's looking for masses of people or experts that will come out to debunk this, and he answers both. Now, the other thing that Timio said was layman, which we all sort of maybe throw that word around a little bit, but if you know anything about Freemasonic brotherhoods, they refer to each other as either Ascended Master, Grand Master, or Brother, or anybody that's outside of their little clique, they call layman. So it's not a big surprise that the Illuminati Flat Earth shill didn't say anything about the fact that there are lots and lots of very smart, educated people who have definitely proven flat Earth 100%. It doesn't need to be proven any further. He just goes on and says he wants both. Now, the reason that is again, he wants lots of people talking about this, and he wants experts to be rolled out that will ultimately discredit the thing as absurd, which again, this effigy of flat Earth is indeed absurd, and it will easily be debunked. This whole thing that they're trying to accomplish, which has nothing to do with the curvature or lack thereof, or the motion of the earth or lack thereof. It has everything to do with this public spectacle, which is intended to get people talking about the issue so that it can be horribly discredited and the laughingstock of the world when their plans come to fruition.
It's both. I want the question raised by enough voices so that people know, okay, it's not settled science yet.
It's not settled science yet. Seriously, you guys already know what no flat earther talks like this. It is settled science, and to somehow marry the concept of flat earth proof hinging upon this ridiculous stunt is exactly the narrative that they want to craft, not with existing flat earthers. That notion is absurd to existing flat earthers. However, we're talking about crafting a certain narrative for the public eye only, making flat earthers appear to be the laughingstock of the world.
And then that pressure will result in the people who can make the case one way or the other to actually take this thing seriously and make the investigation happen.
Make the transvestigation and happen? I mean, make the investigation happen? Really? Make the investigation happen. Well, what has the last 2 years been? We don't need any more PhDs telling us they believe we live on a spinning sphere. That's all this stunt is going to pull, and again, it's going to be a conversation sparked in the public eye with complete incredulity, making the flat earthers appear to be completely incompetent by trying to launch a steam rocket to the Kármán line and possibly killing this alleged stuntman in the process.
Yeah, exactly. There's just, like I said, it's the conspiracy crowd, and like there's you have to be kind of told about flat Earth. You have to be even watching YouTube videos, and some people don't even do that. So when they start looking and seeing flat Earth, I mean, dude, you've seen it in the mainstream. They've been pushing it. It was in It's Always Sunny. It was in like South Park. It's been for the past 2 years, pretty much in our face, and that's why people like me, I think that it's some kind of a psychological operation, because it's Shaq comes out and Kyrie Irving and all these people, and it seems, because I followed the history, obviously, just being a part of it, it seems like when there's a lull in flat Earth, something big will happen, like Shaq or Kyrie Irving or something. So there seems to be somebody with a finger on the pulse of this whole thing, and somebody's trying to push it for whatever reason. And there's history of Freemasons pushing this meme
Yeah, I would not be surprised, and I'm not surprised that you know that, because you guys are all Freemasons.
back in the 20s and the city of Zion and all this kind of shit. So that's why I question it. I mean, I'm still conspiratorial minded in that regard.
You're talking about like cognitive infiltration, Cass Sunstein type stuff, where they go in order to deliberately, intellectually sabotage people.
Now, this is a very telling blurb of the obvious Illuminati flat earth shill referencing Cass Sunstein. Now, I'm pretty sure that this analogy is lost on most people, but let's just take a look a little about Cass Sunstein, who is mentioned in an article on theintercept.com. How covert agents infiltrate the internet to manipulate, deceive, and destroy reputations. This is by Glenn Greenwald from February 24th, 2014 on, again, it's theintercept.com. Quote, one of the many pressing stories that remains to be told from the Snowden archive is how Western intelligence agencies are attempting to manipulate and control online discourse with extreme tactics of deception and reputation destruction. It's time to tell a chunk of that story, complete with the relevant documents. Over the last several weeks, this writer here worked with NBC News to publish a series of articles, and all of this is linked up. I will put a link to this article in the description as well. Returning to the quote, again, over the last several weeks, this writer here worked with NBC News to publish a series of articles about, quote, dirty tricks, tactics used by the GCHQ's previously secret unit. JTRIG, which stands for the Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group, and that's actually mentioned, I believe, later on in this conversation here. Now, these references, which are linked up in the article that I'm referencing here, were based on 4 classified GCHQ documents presented to the National Security Advisory and the other 3 partners in the English-speaking Five Eyes Alliance. Today, we at The Intercept are publishing another new JTRIG document in full entitled The Art of Deception, Training for Online Covert Operations. By publishing these stories one by one, our NBC reporting highlighted some of the key discrete revelations. the monitoring of YouTube and Blogger, the targeting of Anonymous with the very same DDoS attacks they accuse, quote, hacktivists of using, the use of, quote, honey traps, or luring people into compromising situations using sex, and destructive viruses. But here I want to focus and elaborate on the overreaching point revealed by all of these documents, namely that these agencies are attempting to control, infiltrate, manipulate, and warp online discourse, and in doing so are compromising the integrity of the internet itself. Among the core self-identified purposes of JTRIG are two tactics. First, to inject all sorts of false material onto the internet in order to destroy the reputation of its targets, and two, to use social sciences and other techniques to manipulate online discourse and activism to generate outcomes it considers desirable. To see how extremist these programs are, just consider the tactics they boast of using to achieve those ends. Quote, false flag operations, posting material to the internet and falsely attributing it to someone else, fake victim blog posts or pretending to be a victim of the individual whose reputation they want to destroy, and posting negative information on various forums. Here is one illustrative list of tactics from the latest GCHQ document we are publishing today. Disruption, operational playbook, infiltration operation, ruse operation, set piece operation, false flag operation, false rescue operation, disruption operation, and finally sting operation. Other tactics aimed at individuals are listed here under the revealing title, quote, discredit a target. First on this list is set up a honey trap. Next would be change their photos on social networking sites. Write a blog purporting to be one of their victims. Email, text their colleagues, neighbors, friends, etc. Then there are the tactics used to destroy companies the agency targets. That would include leaking confidential information to companies via the press, via blogs, etc. Post negative information on appropriate forums. Stop deals or ruin business relationships. GCHQ describes the purpose of JTRIG in starkly clear terms. Using online techniques to make something happen in the real or cyber world, including information ops to influence or disrupt. Further reading from these GCHQ documents, the effects definition is using online techniques to make something happen in the real or cyber world. Two broad categories would include information ops to influence or disrupt, and technical disruption, known in GCHQ as OCA for online covert action. The four Ds include deny, disrupt, degrade, and deceive. Critically, the quote targets for this deceit and reputation destruction extend far beyond the customary roster of normal spycraft. Hostile nations and their leaders, military agencies, and intelligence services, which would be the normal sort of understanding of what JTRIG would target. However, in fact, the discussion of many of these techniques occurs in the context of using them in lieu of traditional law enforcement against people suspected of, but not charged or convicted of, ordinary crimes, or more broadly still, quote, hacktivism, meaning those who use online protest activity for political ends. The title page of one of these documents reflects the agency's own awareness that it's, quote, punishing the boundaries by using cyber offensive techniques against people who have nothing to do with terrorism or national security threats, and indeed centrally involves law enforcement agents who investigate ordinary crimes. Reading from the same JTRIG source documents, cyber offensive session pushing the boundaries in action against hacktivism. Name redacted, serious crime effects, GCHQ, and name redacted, JTRIG, GCHQ. No matter your views on anonymous, quote, hacktivists or garden variety criminals, is not difficult to see how dangerous it is to have secret government agencies being able to target any individuals they want who have never been charged with, let alone convicted of, any crimes. With these sort of online deception-based tactics of reputation destruction and disruption, there is a strong argument to make, as Jay Lederman demonstrated in The Guardian, in the context of the PayPal 14 hacktivist persecution, that the denial of service tactics used by hacktivists result in, at most, trivial damage, or far less than the cyber warfare tactics favored by the US and the UK, and are far more akin to the type of political protest protected by the First Amendment. The broader point is that far beyond hacktivists, these surveillance agencies have vested themselves with the power to deliberately ruin regular people's reputations and disrupt their online political activity, even though they've been charged with no crimes and even though their actions have no conceivable connection to terrorism or even national security threats. As anonymous expert Gabriella Coleman of McGill University told the author of this article here, quote, targeting the anonymous and hacktivist amounts to targeting citizens for expressing their political beliefs, resulting in the stifling of legitimate dissent, end quote. And returning to the quote from theintercept.com, pointing to this study, and again, all of these are linked up in this article, so it has a lot of source references that you really need to look at. According to this study she published, Professor Coleman vehemently contested the assertion that, quote, there is anything terrorist or violent in their actions, end quote. Returning to the quote from The Intercept, government plans to monitor and influence internet communications and covertly infiltrate online communities in order to sow dissension and disseminate false information have long been the source of speculation. Harvard law professor Cass Sunstein, a close Obama advisor and the White House's former head of the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, wrote a controversial paper, which is linked up, from 2008, proposing that the U.S. government employ teams of covert agents and pseudo-independent advocates to, quote, cognitively infiltrate online groups and websites as well as other activist groups. Sunstein also proposed sending covert agents into, quote, chat rooms, online social networks, or even real space groups, end quote, which spread what he views as false and damaging conspiracy theories about the government. Ironically, the very same Sunstein was recently named by Obama to serve as a member of the NSA review panel created by the White House, one that, while disputing key NSA claims, proceeded to propose many cosmetic reforms to the agency's power, most of which were ignored by the president allegedly, who appointed them. But these GCHQ documents are the first to prove that a major Western government is using some of the most controversial techniques to disseminate deception online and harm the reputations of targets. Under the tactics they use, the state is deliberately spreading lies on the internet about whichever individuals it targets, including the use of what GCHQ itself calls false flag operations and emails to people's families and friends. Who would possibly trust a government to exercise these powers at all, let alone to do so in secret, with virtually no oversight and outside of any cognizable legal framework? Then there is the use of psychology and other social sciences to not only understand, but shape and control how online activism and discourse unfolds. Today's newly published document touts the work of GCHQ's Human Science Operations Cell, devoted to, quote, online human intelligence and, quote, strategic influence and disruption. Those are linked in this article as well. Under the, quote, title Online Covert Action, the document details a variety of means to engage in, quote, influence and info ops, as well as, quote, disruption and computer net attacks, while dissecting how human beings can be manipulated using leaders, trust, obedience, and compliance. Now, I'll throw up some slides of these documents and you can look through them at your leisure. I'm not going to go through all of these instances here, but it is pretty interesting to see the sociological constructs they have in order to mind control people using this J-trig tactic. It's all in black and white here, folks, and these are declassified documents. And if any of this seems familiar when you're considering the obvious flat earth Illuminati shill and what he does on his channel, then his tactics are really no surprise. Continuing with the quote, the documents lay out any theories of how humans interact with one another, particularly online, and then attempt to identify ways to influence the outcomes or, quote, game it. We submitted numerous questions to GCHQ, including 1. Does GCHQ in fact engage in, quote, false flag operations where material is posted to the internet and falsely attributed to someone else? 2. Does GCHQ engage in efforts to influence or manipulate political discourse online? And 3. Does GCHQ's mandate include targeting common criminals such as boiler room operators or only foreign threats? As usual, they ignored those questions and opted instead to send their vague and non-responsive boilerplate or rubber stamp, quote, "It is a long-standing policy that we do not comment on intelligence matters. Furthermore, all of GCHQ's work is carried out in accordance with a strict legal and policy framework which ensures that our activities are authorized, necessary, and proportionate, and that there is rigorous oversight, including from the Secretary of State," and, quote, real quick for a bit of commentary, including from the Secretary of State, who used to be Hillary Clinton and is now Rex Tillerson, the former CEO of ExxonMobil. So, if we're supposed to have any sort of trust that the Secretary of State giving oversight to these J-trig, covert, illegal, unconstitutional actions, socially manipulating the world via the internet using really deep psychological tactics, is not comforting in the slightest. Hillary and Rex Tillerson certainly couldn't be trusted to make a proper sandwich, let alone oversee covert tactics used on the American people by covert government entities. So, continuing on with the article, quote, "These agencies' refusal to comment on intelligence matters," meaning talk at all about anything and everything they do, "is precisely why whistleblowing is so urgent. The journalism that supports it is so clearly in the public interest, and the increasingly unhinged attacks by these agencies so easy to understand. Claims that government agencies are infiltrating online communities and engaging in false flag operations, which is their own definition of their behavior, to discredit targets are often dismissed as, quote, conspiracy theories, but these documents leave no doubt that they are doing precisely that. Whatever else is true, no government should be able to engage in these tactics. What justification is there for having government agencies target people who have been charged with no crime for reputation destruction, infiltrate online political communities, and develop techniques for manipulating online discourse? But to allow those actions with no public knowledge or accountability is particularly unjustifiable." End quote. So, anyone familiar with the platform of this obvious Illuminati shill, if you're surprised that he uses other people's names, if you're surprised that he claims to be a flat earther without any sort of proof that he can think of that the earth isn't a spinning sphere, when he's talking with his obvious Freemasonic shills on the other end of the false dichotomy here, then you're blind if you don't see this. I'm sorry, but hopefully your eyes are beginning to open. But like I've been saying, it still gets worse. And I just want to add, I really don't think that all of the Illuminati shills involved in such grassroots truth movements will be as obvious as this one. Honestly, I mean, this one here is so obvious to anybody with a discerning eye that it's almost laughable, and it really makes you wonder if he's not out there to test the waters to see how sharp we truthers are or how stupid we are. But in fact, it stands to reason that this J-Trig operation probably has more people that are more convincing.
Yeah, it would fit the MO.
It would, because I mean, really, we can see the results of what's happened. A lot of people used to talk about the hoaxes and Sandy Hook and all this shit. And then when they found the flat Earth, they pretty much primarily focus on the flat Earth and all this drama and shit.
Focus on the flat Earth and all this drama. There is no drama to flat Earth. The truth isn't drama. What these sort of trolls and industrialized trolls and people using really deep psychological manipulation on unsuspecting truthers, literally hypnotizing them, literally using these J-Trig tactics, probably to ends that we'll never truly know the depths of. It is just so in your face, it's preposterous.
So
Well,
it worked. If it
all
was
you
a
need to
sign.
do is look at the blueprint for cognitive infiltration.
Do you notice how they're sitting around joking about cognitive infiltration? Well, let's just talk a little bit about cognitive infiltration. Cognitive infiltration is a term coined by Cass Sunstein and Adrian Vermeule to refer to the use of government and third party cognitive provocateurs and front groups to infiltrate social networks, other online groups, and real life groups built around conspiracy theories. They use the term mostly in reference to the 9/11, and by the way, this is quoting Rational Wiki, link in the descripts, reference to the 9/11 conspiracist culture. In response, David Ray Griffin wrote a book entitled Cognitive Infiltration, once again railing against the official conspiracy theory. Critics have noted that various aspects of this strategy are illegal and similar to the FBI's COINTELPRO and the Bush administration's use of independent analysts, so called, and paid off pundits. Truthers can now write off anyone who debunks their conspiracy theories as merely cognitive infiltrators, which they have done before, though. The tendrils of cognitive infiltration have wound their way into every aspect of society. Even WikiLeaks is an attempt at cognitive infiltration by Sunstein through the use of limited hangout. And again, that is the rational wiki definition. However, I would submit that what we're witnessing here is people involved in cognitive infiltration, which was laid out very nicely in the article that we just read through. So it's no coincidence that these people are dropping names like Cass Sunstein and laughing about things like cognitive infiltration, which fairly accurately proves that these guys are in on it. Nobody else sits around and jokes and laughs about this sort of thing unless they're in on the joke. But of course, they're relying on the fact or the assumption that the truther community is full of a bunch of idiots because people are actually following along with this really quite obvious Illuminati shill.
In the 90s, it was the militias was the big thing. Now, my father-in-law, he lives in my house. He was a cop in OKC for like 20 years. And he used to talk about, oh yeah, these militia movements and blah, blah, blah. He's like, what they didn't know is that 80% of them were all feds that had no clue that each other were feds.
Now, what does the average person think that this upside down headed person is talking about when he says his uncle was an OKC Fed and 80% of the people who were basically working against the local militias, they didn't know, 80% of them didn't know that one another were all OKC feds. So this is a link from the Kansas City or OKCFed.org. An OKC Fed would be a Federal Reserve law enforcement officer. And it says the qualifications for an OKC Fed is a high school diploma or equivalent and at least 1 year of armed law enforcement, military, corrections, or security experience. Other requirements: applicants must be at least 21 years of age, have a valid driver's license, possess good interpersonal and customer service skills, have basic computer skills including email and Word, complete successfully a pre-employment psychological examination, where I submit that these psychological examinations are used to find and promote psychopaths in such fraternal organizations. And I also think it's safe to assume that you must be an Illuminati shill to become an OKC Fed. Because, of course, we know that this whole thing is very much generational. That's just my opinion. Continuing with the actual requirements to be an OKC Fed is to complete successfully the federal law enforcement legal training, complete successfully the, quote, fit for duty physical and drug testing, complete successfully handgun training, complete successfully semi-automatic heart defibrillator first aid and CPR training, maintain physical fitness to effectively respond to incidents, and be available to work weekends, holidays, and overtime. The training for OKC Feds: the job candidates enroll in 8 weeks of on-site training that covers report writing, equipment use, self-defense, and more. Upon successful competition, candidates are sworn in as Federal Reserve law enforcement officers. During initial training, the typical schedule is 6:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. weekdays. Once a shift is assigned, the officer completes a 30-day on-the-job training program. Officers typically work a fixed shift, which may include weekends. Benefits to being an OKC Fed are: our employees are our most valuable asset. Because we want the best individuals, the Kansas City Fed provides employees with competitive pay, a market-leading benefits package, and continuous development opportunities. For more details, visit our benefits website. Now, OKC Fed is nothing to brag about, and when you sort of say that tongue-in-cheek, laughing about it in your coded conversation that you think nobody's going to listen to, because frankly, nobody does listen to this group. However, the people that do, you assume they're not going to fully understand what you're laughing and joking about. However, having an uncle that works for the non-federal, non-reserve, non-bank scam, which is probably the biggest scandal in all of history in terms of the financial damage which the Federal Reserve, the non-federal, non-reserve, non-bank scam has done to the American people. They have illegitimately, illegally, and viciously printed our money out of its inherent wealth by changing it over to a fiat currency not backed by anything but the people's faith in the currency and our addiction to so-called fossil fuels, which is yet another deception in order to enrich the elites, poison the world, and further gain control over the masses through debt, slavery, taxation, and worthless oil, which we absolutely don't need to run engines. So, for someone who claims to be in the truth community and sits there and chuckles about his uncle working for the non-federal, non-reserve scam, which again is the biggest scam in terms of monetary damage to America, is frankly just disgusting. And anyone in the truth community who thinks it's cool and funny to work for the OKC Fed is just absolutely ridiculous. The whole thing, this whole conversation is ridiculous and should be extremely telling to anyone who knows anything about the truth movement. And even if you didn't know anything about this stuff before, if you've watched this long, well, then surely you know now exactly why this particular Illuminati flat Earth shill behaves in the way that he does.
About he's like, what they didn't know is that 80% of them were all feds that had no clue that each other were feds, and like only 20% of them were like legit. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know. It was a big information gathering type thing. So who knows what's what? I don't
It's
know.
an information war, and they understand that it's the grand chessboard. They understand
Right, well,
that you need to play both
I
sides,
guess-
basically.
I guess my point is that if they were to go to those measures in the 90s, then why wouldn't they just employ people in the 2010s and like just sit on a computer? Like,
Yeah, why wouldn't they do that? Oh, wait a minute. They are. And it isn't they, it's you. You're sitting there doing that right now. So, the hidden in plain sight stuff does not work, and you Illuminati shills can sit there and chuckle about your ridiculous tactics all day long. In the end, the truth is going to win this, and the deceivers are going to be completely caught with their pants down. For example, this very video which you're watching.
They do. There's J Trig, and there's all kinds of
there's all
Jewish
kinds
trolls
of
I
things.
hear.
There's all kinds
Yeah.
of things, dude.
Indeed, there is JTrig, and JTrig operations are exactly what you people are participating in now, laughing about it in front of people's faces because you think that we're too stupid to realize it.
But I think it's funny when I'm called a.
Isn't that
an
what we
agent
are?
or- Yeah, we're globe shills.
I will say, at least they're being honest. He just said he was just talking about JTrig and this, that, and the other, and how that's all out there. And the other one said, that's what we are. And he said, yes, that's what we are. We're Globe Earth shills. So it's fairly obvious that these people are in collusion. And if you haven't gotten that now, it actually continues to get worse, if you can believe this or not.
Nah, dude,
We're
it's
actually,
just
it's funny because we're actual truthers, like trying to bring what we think is the truth to
Yeah.
people that call themselves truthers, that completely have blinders on and shut off any information to the contrary of their new belief.
Having blinders on to anything contrary than their beliefs would strictly apply to people who believe that the Earth is a spinning sphere. Anyone who believes they live stuck to the side of a spinning sphere in the vacuum of space is necessarily not thinking. So to say that that's what you are as a truther is abjectly ridiculous.
nah.
So
We're all just lappers. We're all just live action role players.
Tim and I have some disagreements we need to flush out.
Yes, I'm sure that you guys have disagreements that you need to flush out.
yeah, well, you
I'm the
haven't
one-
been around the conspiracy crowd. You have no idea what's going on. Go ahead.
I'm the one that started the J-Trig thing. I started saying that all of the trolls are to be considered J-Trig until proven otherwise, because that's how you behave.
Wow, isn't that clever of you to call the trolls J-Trig? Because part of J-Trig is to discredit actual people in the truth movement. Huh, very funny.
J-Trig until proven otherwise, because that's how you behave. I don't have any evidence that's what you are, but we're just assuming it. So that's why I've called you all flying monkeys, New World Order sock puppets, and Agent Smiths and Agent Smithettes.
Yes, according to this flat earther, we have no evidence of anything except for all of the evidence that people have been working very hard to get into the public eye without a bunch of Illuminati Freemasonic shills muddying the waters of the discussion with their abject nonsense and extremely divisive, manipulative, psychological tactics.
Might as
I
well,
like
right?
it, dude. Sometimes I tune in. I'll just troll your chat for a second just to hear you talk about me, dude. It's hilarious.
I bet it is hilarious because, according to what I understand, this alleged flat earther is responsible for doxing the wrong guy and pinning the tail on the donkey for some innocent person who has nothing to do with flat Earth or the round Earth, sphere Earth debate, whatever. And this whole thing was orchestrated by the Freemasonic Illuminati shill posing as a flat earther. He actually doxed the wrong guy, and his minions proceeded to physically harass this actual innocent person, which now categorizes flat earthers as a threat, a real threat to innocent people's pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. And so, anyone following this obvious Illuminati shill and going and acting violence, whether that's physical violence or psychological or personal defamation of character of some innocent person, is 100% in the wrong here.
I don't mind it, man. I think we have a very interesting and very interesting relationship. And I think when this whole flat Earth sophism Trojan horse Psy-Op meme is done and figured out, I think that maybe we will be good friends for years to come.
Well, one of the things I want to make it a point to do is get rid of this us versus them mindset, because that is classic cult thinking. And no matter what the debate is, if it's pro-life, abortion, flat Earth, round Earth, whatever it is, I don't think it makes sense to make your opponents as enemies and then put up that emotional wall there. And so I'm like, that's just a bad sign. And I saw that early on.
Yes, that sounds very genuine and honest of you. However, your group's only tactic is dividing and conquering. You people are literally caught red-handed using the classic Hegelian dialectic in order to destroy grassroots movements and control the narrative of history. And it isn't funny at all. You people aren't slick or clever at all, not even in the slightest. And hopefully the viewer can see this.
That's why
Yeah,
I don't hesitate to talk.
But your channel is like the communist flat Earth channel. I mean, with all the
No, there's no communists. There's no communists there.
all the rules. Like you can't do shit or you're banned. You're gone, dude.
Here's why I say there's no communists there. Because every time I fucking make a comment in IPS's chat, that's like a fucking, oh, this comrade's getting a helicopter ride. This dude always is like, head upside down head says this, and fuck that, and fuck commies. All right.
Yeah, his chat reminds me of communism and organized religion.
Well, what I'm going for is more like Mussolini-style fascism.
There you go.
You know what's really funny about this is that he's actually telling the truth. If you've ever been to one of this character's chat rooms, it is exactly like Mussolini fascism in an online sort of sense, with regards to the fact that they silence dissenters, bash anyone who goes against their minions or the leader of their Mussolini cult. When somebody is speaking of Mussolini fascism, we'll get into that real quick, but just to touch on the phrasing of flying monkeys, it's a phrase used in popular psychology mainly in the context of narcissistic abuse. They are people who act on behalf of a narcissist to a third party, usually for an abusive purpose. Enablers just allow or cover for the narcissist or abuser's own bad behavior. And so the fact that he's mentioning all of this stuff, using the term flying monkeys in jest, giggling with well-known J-Trig trolls, really is telling about his personality and the tactics that this person is using to really manipulate a lot of innocent and well-meaning people, and it is something that needs to be exposed and understood by the community at large. In 1919, Mussolini founded the Fascist Party. Benito Mussolini, an Italian World War I veteran and publisher of socialist newspapers, breaks with the Italian socialists and establishes the nationalist Fasci di Combattimento, named after the Italian peasant revolutionaries, or, quote, fighting bands from the 19th century. By the way, this is quoting history.com. We'll put a link in the description. commonly known as the Fascist Party, Mussolini's new right-wing organization advocated Italian nationalism, had black shirts for uniforms, and launched a program of terrorism and intimidation against its leftist opponents. I'm going to go on the record and say that terrorist intimidation is not something that we want associated with the Flat Earth Truth movement. Now, this should go without saying, but again, this obvious Illuminati shill posing to be a flat earther talks about this sort of thing all the time to the people who follow him, and nobody seems to get what he's saying except for possibly the people who are following him in terms of the Freemasonic Lodge and other Illuminati minions, as well as innocent people who are following him because they think that it's actually a truth thing. It's worth mentioning that on the back of every United States dime, you will see what is a fasci. It was ultimately, originally, it seems that it was a Roman symbol where you have many thin sticks or twigs which are bound together, and at the head there is an axe or the head of a hatchet. And what this represents is groups that the fascist group will always stick together and therefore be stronger than the individuals whom they are always at war with in a covert sense. And as long as the individuals, the regular people, do not band together and allow themselves to be divided as single twigs in the wind, the fascist party uses this symbol to represent the multiple twigs banded together as their unity, and the head of the hatchet symbolizes their power or their prowess. And so this is a very important thing to note, that fascism is no new thing to America, although the fact that this Illuminati shill admits to running their channel and live chat rooms as a Mussolini style of fascism is extremely telling. Now, going back to the quote from History.com, in October of 1922, Mussolini led the fascists on a march on Rome, and King Emmanuel III, who had little faith in Italy's parliamentary government, asked Mussolini to form a new government. Initially, Mussolini, who was appointed prime minister at the head of a three-member fascist cabinet, cooperated with the Italian parliament, but aided by his brutal police organization, he soon became the effective dictator of Italy. In 1924, a socialist backlash was suppressed, and in January of 1925, a fascist state was officially proclaimed with Mussolini as Deuce, or maybe Duce, or means the leader. Mussolini appealed to Italy's former Western allies for new treaties, but his brutal 1935 invasion of Ethiopia ended all hope of alliance with the Western democracies. In 1936, Mussolini joined the Nazi leader Adolf Hitler in his support of Francisco Franco's nationalist forces in the Spanish Civil War, prompting the signing of a treaty of cooperation in foreign policy between Italy and Nazi Germany in 1937. Although Adolf Hitler's Nazi revolution was modeled after the rise of Mussolini himself and the Italian Fascist Party, Fascist Italy and Deuce proved overwhelmingly the weaker partner in the Berlin-Rome axis during World War II. In July of 1943, the failure of the Italian war effort and the imminent invasion of the Italian mainland by the Allies led to a rebellion within the Fascist Party. 2 days after the fall of Palermo on July 24th, the Fascist Grand Council rejected the policy dictated by Hitler through Mussolini, and on July 25th, the Deuce was arrested. So, to liken yourself to, or to liken your tactics to that of Mussolini-style communism is very telling indeed.
What I'm going for is more like Mussolini-style fascism. There you go.
Like the previous Cuban deal.
What are like your three favorite or three most influential books in your mind that you've read?
I'd say The 48 Laws of Power.
Are you saying that just
Escape,
because I'm on the?
escape from freedom, which explains the Globey mindset or the normie mindset. And then the third one, I think, would probably have to be the Iliad, Homer's The Iliad.
Oh wow, really?
Since I'm pretty sure that nobody but these people have read all of these books, let's just go ahead and take a look at his three choices of books, with the exception of the Iliad, because I'm pretty sure that everyone's familiar with the Iliad. But let's look a little bit deeper into his two most influential books that, yet another red flag, the well-known Timmy O, the globe earth troll of the century, really thinks is amusing and agrees with and is very impressed with his well-reading, well-readedness, or whatever you want to call it. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to look at a summation of every last one of the principles described in this book, which the Illuminati shill pretending to be a flat earther claims is his first most influential book.
The 48 Laws of Power.
Now I'll put a link in the description to this synopsis. It was written December 27th, 2013 by SAMP615 on theantimba.com. Again, a link will be in the description for this, but this is really important and very disturbing for anyone who decides to continue following this character after learning his number one most influential book. Now, a note before reading this, and this is a quote, this cheat sheet is a good summary and is perfect if you've already read the book. If you want to buy the book, which I highly recommend, this author, this writer here highly recommends, please use the link. Again, there's a link in the description, blah, 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 blah. Okay, law number 1. Never outshine the master. Make those above you feel superior. Do not show your talents too much. It'll make them insecure. Make the master appear more brilliant than they are. Law number 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn to use enemies. Friends will quickly betray you. Hire former enemies. They'll be loyal. Law number 3. Conceal your intentions. Keep people off balance. They cannot prepare if they don't know. Guide them down the wrong path. Law number 4. Always say less than necessary. When trying to impress, the more you say, the more common you look and less in control. Be vague. Powerful people impress and intimidate by saying less. Law number 5. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. Reputation is the cornerstone of power. Reputation alone will make you win. Destroy enemies by attacking their reputation. Then stand aside and let the public hang them. Law number 6. Court attention at all costs. Everything is judged by appearance. What is unseen counts for nothing. Never get lost in a crowd. Be mysterious. Appear more colorful than the masses. Law 7. Let others do the work for you, but always take credit. Use the skills of others to do the work for you. Never do yourself what others can do for you. Your efficiency will appear godlike. Law number 8. Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. When you force others to act, you're in control. Make opponents come to you. Lure with gains, then attack. Law number 9. Win through your actions, never through argument. You never win through argument. The resentment lasts long. It's more powerful to agree with actions. Demonstrate, but do not explain. Law number 10. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and the unlucky. You will die from others' misery. Emotional states are as infectious as diseases. The unfortunate draw misfortune upon themselves and will draw it onto you. Associate with the happy and fortunate. Law number 11. Learn to keep people dependent upon you. To maintain independence, you must be needed and wanted. The more you're relied on, the more freedom you have. Make people depend on you for happiness. Never teach them enough so they can do without you. Law number 12. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. One sincere move will cover over a dozen dishonest ones. Honesty can bring down the guard of suspicious people. Open their shield with honesty, then deceive. Law number 13. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never their mercy. Do not remind people of past deeds. Find something that will benefit them and emphasize it out of proportion. Law number 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy. Learn to probe and find valuable information. Ask indirect questions. Every occasion is a chance to spy. Law 15. Crush your enemy totally. More is lost through stopping halfway. Crush your enemy in body and spirit. Law number 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Too much circulation makes the price go down. If you're already established in a group, temporarily withdraw to make people talk. Create value through scarcity. Law number 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Being predictable gives control to others. Behavior that isn't consistent will wear people out, and they'll stop trying to explain things. When used to the extreme, you'll intimidate and terrorize. Law number 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. Isolation cuts you off from valuable information. It's better to mingle. You are shielded from your enemy in a crowd. Law number 19. Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. Never assume everyone will react the same way. Choose your victims carefully. Never offend the wrong person. Law number 20. Do not commit to anyone. Fools rush to pick a side. Do not commit yourself to cause but yourself. Maintain independence. Make people chase you and play people against one another. Law number 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. See dumber than your mark. Don't be stupid, but make your mark appear smarter than you. Making them appear smarter hides your motives. Law number 22. Use the surrender tactic. Transform weaknesses into power. When you're weaker, never fight just for honor, but surrender. Do not give them the satisfaction to win. Surrender. Turn the other cheek to infuriate them. Law number 23. Concentrate your forces. Intensity defeats extensity every time. Find a fat cow that'll give you milk for a long time. Law number 24. Play the perfect courtier. Master the art of indirection. Assert power gracefully. Law number 25. Recreate yourself. Create an identity that commands attention and never bores. Be the master of your own image. Use large gestures and actions. Your character will seem huge and you'll gain power. Law number 26. Keep your hands clean. Never appear soiled by mistakes. Use others as scapegoats to disguise your involvement. Law number 27. Play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. People want to believe in something. Become the focal point of this and offer them a cause, a new faith. Keep your words vague but full of promise. Emphasize enthusiasm over rationality. Give your new disciples rituals to perform and ask them to make sacrifices. Law number 28. Enter action with boldness. If you're unsure, then don't do it. Timidity is dangerous. Any mistakes you commit through audacity are easily corrected with more audacity. Everyone admires boldness. No one honors the timid. Law number 29. Plan all the way to the end. The end is everything. Take into account of scenario. If you plan, you won't be overwhelmed. Guide fortune by thinking far ahead. Law number 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. Conceal the clever tricks. Make your success seem natural. Do not reveal how hard you work. Teach no one your tricks. Law number 31. Control the opinions. Get others to play with the cards you deal. The best deceptions seem to give the other person a choice. Give options so no matter the choice, you win. Law number 32. Play to people's fantasies. The truth is unpleasant. Avoid it. Yeah. People that manufacture romance are like oases in the desert. There's great power in tapping into people's fantasies. Law number 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Find others' weaknesses. It's usually insecurity, uncontrollable emotions, and secret pleasures. Law number 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like a king. The way you carry yourself determines how you're treated. Appearing vulgar or common will make people disrespect you. Kings respect themselves and inspire the same in others. By acting confident, you make yourself destined to wear a crown. Law number 35. Master the art of timing. Never seem in a hurry, always seem patient. Sniff out the spirit of the times. Find the trends that'll give you power. Learn to stand back when not ready and then strike. Law number 36. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge. Acknowledging petty problems gives them existence. When you acknowledge an enemy, you make them stronger. The more you mistakenly make yourself visible, the worse this gets. If you want something but can't have it, then disdain it. The less interest you reveal, the more superior you seem. Law number 37. Create compelling spectacles. Striking imagery and symbolic gestures create the aura of power, and people respond. Stage spectacles for those around you and heighten your own presence. Dazzle by appearance. Law number 38. Think as you like, but behave like others. By flaunting your unconventional ways, people will only think you want attention. They'll punish you for making them feel inferior. Blend in. Law number 39. Stir up waters to catch fish. Anger and emotion is counterproductive. Stay calm and objective. Make enemies emotional while you stay calm. Rattle your enemies. And I gotta tell you, this is rather troubling to find somebody who names this as their most influential book in the flat earth truth community. I mean, give me a break, and we're almost done here, and I've got some more commentary on this, of course, but law number 40, despise the free lunch. What's offered for free is dangerous. Pay your own way to avoid guilt and gratitude. No cutting corners with excellence. Be lavish with your money. Keep it circulating. Generosity is a sign and magnet for power. Law number 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. What happens first always appears better and more original than what's next. Following great people means you must double their power. Gain power by shining in your own way. Law number 42. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Trouble can be traced to a single individual. These people will influence others. Do not negotiate, but banish them. Strike at the source of the trouble. And he's certainly not following that advice with old Timeo, the #1 globe Earth Illuminati shill in the world. Law number 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others. Coercion will work against you. Seduce others into wanting to move in your direction. Seduce others by operating in their individual psychologies and weaknesses. Soften them by working their emotions and what they fear. Ignore their hearts and minds, and they will grow to hate you. Law number 44. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. When you mirror exactly what your enemies do, they cannot figure out your strategy. Or can they? The mirror effect mocks and humiliates them, making them overreact. Hold a mirror to their psyches and you'll seduce them, and they'll think they share your values. Mirror their actions and they learn lessons. Lessons that you, the psychopath reading this book, want them to learn, I would add. That is, of course, my personal opinion, and I am not a licensed psychologist, but I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure this one out. Law number 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. Everyone wants change, but too much is traumatic. When new to power, show you respect the old ways. Make change feel like a gentle improvement on the past. Law number 46. Never appear too perfect. It's dangerous to appear like you have no thoughts. It's okay to admit to small defects. Law number 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, know when to stop. When going too far in victory, you make more enemies. Set up a goal, achieve it, then stop. Assume formlessness. By having a visible plan, you open yourself to attack. Stay adaptable and on the move. Accept that nothing is certain and no law is fixed. Everything changes and never bet on it. So, a bit of commentary here, and we'll get back into this ridiculous interview or conversation between obvious Illuminati shills. Whoever wrote that book is obviously a psychopath, a pathological liar, a regular manipulator, and I would not be surprised whatsoever if they're a Freemason and or absolute Satanist, because that's the way that these people think. I don't even have to research the author. I'm not going to research the author. However, that person who wrote the book, and anyone who reads it and thinks it's inspirational, will necessarily be a psychopath, in my personal opinion, and a pathological liar. Meaning they have two fairly obvious narcissistic traits. However, they are masters at hiding it, for they have an end goal which they plan on achieving. However, hopefully we can stop this before it happens, people.
The 48 laws of power? Are you saying that because I'm on the...
Escape from freedom.
As promised, we're going to take a quick look at Escape from Freedom, this Illuminati shill pretending to be a flat earth truther's second most influential book. So this is a summary of Escape from Freedom from bookrags.com. I'm not necessarily going to read the whole thing, but we'll just read the first section, and I'll put a link in the description. This is from bookrags.com. Escape from Freedom is Erich Fromm's psychological history of the social conditions which developed in Europe between the Middle Ages and the mid 20th century, which culminated in the rise of the Nazi Party to power in Germany under Adolf Hitler. Fromm is writing in 1941 after Hitler has come to power and begun his aggressive campaign to conquer Europe, but before the United States has entered what is to become the Second World War. The underlying question of Fromm's work is how the German people allowed Hitler's totalitarian regime to gain power, seemingly willingly, and with their enthusiastic support. A secondary question Fromm asks is whether or not democracy, such as that found outside of Germany, makes a people safe from similar developments. He identifies a basic psychological need which has led to the support for the Nazis in Germany and continues by warning that this need is not necessarily filled in a democracy. Fromm answers his main question by characterizing the social character of the German people after World War I as one especially susceptible to the message of the Nazi Party. Now, I'll just leave it at that. That's just the very beginning of this synopsis of Escape from Freedom, this crypto flat earther, his second most influential book. And if you want to research the Iliad, that was one of Homer's epics. Homer was, of course, not the guy from The Simpsons, but the ancient Greek who wrote the mythological tales, allegedly, of the Odyssey and the Iliad. And of course, both of these stories are echoed in Freemasonic rites and practices. Freemasonry is merely occult mystery religions disguised in a New World Order secret society that spans the upper echelons of the corporate fascist governments which are in place all over the world.
Escape from Freedom, which explains the Globey mindset or the normie mindset.
And then the third one, I think, would probably have to be the Iliad, Homer's The Iliad.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, I know you're pretty well read. You have some pretty interesting kind of exoteric books too, don't you?
Wow. Two identical compliments from Timmy O in a single conversation. Well, ain't that a surprise?
Yeah, but I've been like doing what you would call, I know you don't believe in this stuff probably, but I've been doing what you would call witchcraft since I was a teenager. And I've never attached any dogma to it. No rules, no, you do something, you curse someone, it bounces back. No, I just see it as an extension of the intellect that most people haven't tapped into.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. That's exactly what we need in the flat earth movement is an Illuminati shill who reads books that are obviously written by psychopaths and calls it their number one inspiration, and further books written by Nazis about how they controlled people's minds. And yeah, that's exactly what we need in the truth movement. Furthermore, we definitely need some self-proclaimed witches or warlocks or whatever this creepy thing claims to be. Yes, we definitely need more of those in the truth movement. Like we need a new hole in the head, right?
And I I have no problem discussing it, but most people don't even take it seriously as a subject.
No, of course they don't, because you're playing into people's trust and then deceiving them. And so the nature of deceiving somebody is confusing them about what you're talking about. And it's working because people in the flat earth community are especially welcoming to those who pretend to be flat earthers, it would appear.
Nor do I really care for people to believe in it. It's actually better for me if people assume it's all fake because it gives me plausible deniability if I start
believe you.
tampering with cause and effect.
You have no plausible deniability. You have no authority, and you have no right to act as if you do. What you're talking about here is just absolute toxicity, which there is no place for in the truth community.
How is that? What do you mean by spell casting? Are you using ambiguous words
No.
precisely so that it continues to work?
The elite use witchcraft on us. We just like train.
Are you trolling me right now?
No.
No, bro.
Look at.
If I am trolling,
Yeah, okay, we really need to flesh out our disagreements. I'm glad this got brought
Yep.
up.
Absolutely.
You guys think that there's spells? Really?
I wouldn't say spells in the sense you think. Like, there's not like a set of words that if you said something and you read them in a certain way, some effect would occur. Not at all. What I'm saying is that words, symbols, images, various phenomenon
Language.
can be used to channel essentially your focus concentration in a way that affects reality as it unfolds. And it sounds sci-fi or nutty, but that's pretty much how it works.
That's kind of like what quantum mechanics uncertainty principles hint towards as well.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Well, it's metaphysical, basically. I mean, there
Yeah.
are things that we can't explain.
It is
we call it
metaphysical.
mind.
I would explain it like this: like, do you believe love at first sight? And I would ask the question like, okay, well, what is that? And I mean, would that be like two people lock eyes across a room and their consciousness actually melds with each other? Like, what are we talking about when we talk about like intention? What is, you know what I mean? Like, so if you're talking about like spells or witchcraft, like it could easily be described as intention, and intention goes far beyond the spectrum of human senses. Am I touching on something good here?
Yeah, what you're describing, you would call lesser magic, where it still involves like the physical body, you know, your eyes, the pheromones, body language, meta communication, psychology. That would be lesser magic. Then the greater magic would be stuff where you're actually in your house in a dark room with candles, focused on something or someone and causing real-time effects.
And I wonder if those would be positive effects or negative effects.
Are you a good witch or a bad witch?
So they're two different areas, but in order to be good at life, you're better off learning lesser magic. The people who only focus on the higher stuff, like trying to conjure demons and stuff, they usually turn up to be a bunch of basement dwellers and they don't do anything with their lives.
Maybe that's because it doesn't work and it's just a waste of time.
Well, I would say so. I would say don't believe it until you've seen it. But all of my beliefs come from direct experience, and I've had enough experience, and like I approach it with a very scientific methodology, and we always did this. Like even when I first started doing this stuff, I would have other people would want to be involved in it. I'd be like, yeah, sure, come to ritual. But if they didn't get results that we could quantify in some way, we would assume the person was a dud, because not everyone can do it.
Yeah, come to ritual so you can try to learn how to give people aneurysms from 500 miles away.
I think I think you underestimate your fellow humans' capacity to understand their own mind and the world around them.
I would say you do if you don't think it's possible for someone's mind. Like, so for example, do you think it's possible to cause someone who's annoyed you to have an aneurysm if they're 500 miles away just by having a really negative thought and intensely focusing upon them?
Someone who's annoyed you to have an aneurysm if they're 500 miles away.
To have an aneurysm if they're 500 miles away just by having a really negative thought and intensely focusing upon them.
Wow, this is definitely the sort of truther that I want to be associated with in the flat Earth truth movement. Don't you all? Don't you all want to be associated with somebody who apparently brags about being able to kill people with his mind, which is a massive delusion of grandeur and an admission that this person is not a truther. This person is an Illuminati shill.
If they are made aware of it and other influence, if you are as important in their life as they are in yours, yes, you can do that. But they have to be made aware of they have to somehow be told and become aware of what you are doing and whatever suspicious, weird eye movements or whatever intent you have. They have to know that is happening, and then that raises doubt and stress and things in their mind.
Are you a materialist, Lewis?
I am very much a materialist, but that's an ever-expanding thing now that we're learning just how strange the world is.
So you were a bit of a materialist until you spent some time with this obvious Freemasonic Illuminati Grand Master who is teaching you, well, essentially layman's from his perspective, obviously, a little bit more about the actual nature of the Freemasonic order, which is directly tied to, obviously, Satanism and witchcraft. So yes, I can see why your views would be changing on that because you're being illuminated by this Illuminati frickin' master, right? I mean, give me a break, people. Give me a break.
Have you ever
Very true.
experienced synchronicity, like, or more than one synchronicity in a day?
What do you mean by that?
Like something that appears to be just a mere coincidence with personal significance, but it ties into what you were thinking and may even give you some type of I don't know, I won't say like prognostication, but it might hint at something or foreshadow.
It's like a coincidence
By
that has
synchronicity,
a
like,
spiritual meaning attached to it. That's a coincidence.
sure, exactly.
Those typically happen in stride with significant life choices and changes that have occurred. But no, not really. I wouldn't say that that happens on an unpredictable basis.
Okay, but you've had them during significant life changes and choices, because my point here is that the idea of the ritual chamber is you enter a place where you're making decisions about what's to come next, and what you're causing is you're causing fortuitous coincidences or synchronicities. And I think that the individual is a causal factor in the synchronicities that unfold, that they are not coincidental.
I think they're very chaotic and you don't have total control and you just become better at controlling circumstances and paying attention to them.
Einstein said God doesn't play dice.
Well, I think what separates someone who practices this stuff and someone who doesn't is one is a victim of circumstance and the other takes a more active role in controlling circumstance. It's like if I gave you a magic lamp that had a genie and gave you 3 wishes, would you use it?
No,
There we
I
go.
probably wouldn't accept it. I probably wouldn't accept it. It'd be a waste of space.
Let me just bring up a point that I don't know if I brought up too many times. Supernatural. It is proof of supernatural. It's called Kirlian photography, and what people have found out, and Kirlian photography has existed pretty much since photography has existed.
I'm really just ceasing commenting on this anymore, except I just had to point out that Carillion photography has not been around since, oh, well, photography's been around. That is just totally false. Photography was invented in 1839. Carillion photography was accidentally discovered 100 years later in 1939. So that is just nonsense what this person is claiming on this show.
What people have found out is if you lose fingers or hands, or if you're an amputee, Kirlian photography will take a picture of you and your shit will still exist, right? And if that's the case, then what is it taking a picture of? And let me get a link for you guys so you're not in the dark if you haven't heard of
Yeah,
this
that
yet.
Carillion, I think John LeBon thinks it's a hoax or something like that, but it is pretty interesting.
Well, referencing John LeBon as if because he thinks it's a hoax, then there necessarily must be something to what he says. Although anybody can do research on Carillion photography and find out that it is indeed a thing. But it just goes to show the level of assumption that these people go to without doing even the slightest moniker of research into a topic, or at least that's what they pretend to do.
Does it have to do with kind of like how you can kind of see like a life force, so to speak?
You can see an aura almost around people, and and people, and they found that people who are amputees, they will show their aura of where their arms and legs used to be.
So I've actually taken mushrooms with people in different cities, 2 to 3 people, I forget how many, but they told me that I have literally a green aura around me, and they didn't know the other person and stuff like that. So I don't know. There is evidence of like things that we can't explain, like the metaphysical kind of stuff.
Right, right.
Not, it's not so cut and dry as the rational materials like the
right. When I dipped into and let me preface too that I am an atheist per se, but I'm also a materialist, but I'm also understanding that my senses are dull compared to what may exist. And I say may because if I can't perceive it, I can't even identify it.
Do you grow
And it's
bugs?
just
Do you grow stuff, Tim? Like plants?
Oh yeah, several houses.
That's I've heard like people with a green aura or something like to grow plants.
Weird. Yeah, I actually, they're my sweeties. I fucking love them.
Yeah, Timio loves his pot plants that he has in several houses that don't actually exist, as he would be breaking one of the virtues or doctrines of Freemasonry if he were to actually partake in such activities. He loves them, but what's interesting, what I've heard about people with green auras, it's something a little bit different than they like to grow plants. Now, according to bestpsychicreading.org, link in the descripts, having a green aura can mean, just as in nature, clear green is the color of balance and harmony. It represents the soul as the link between the body and spirit. Shakespeare was correct when he described jealousy as a green-eyed monster. A murky green aura indicates that the person is experiencing jealousy, possessiveness, selfishness, and the desire to manipulate others. I would quickly mention this is where we get the phrase green with envy. A very dark green aura suggests the person is suffering from chronic depression. On the positive side, an upward flowing green aura, which I highly doubt is the case with this one, indicates a person who is seeking identity and individuality, and that the person is sympathetic to others as well as compassionate. Some of the characteristics of a positive green aura are intelligence, quickness, and good at business. I would probably go with the negative connotations to the dark green or murky green aura in this case.
Beautiful ladies. But hey, IPS, you wanna? I don't know if it's too soon, but you wanna have a chat fairly soon about maybe the us versus them mentality?
Why don't you guys just do it at the next lodge meeting?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm going to be available pretty much this whole week, just working on stuff. But yeah, I think that's an important topic. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate your commentary, everyone here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming, brother.
Nice
we
meeting
definitely, we definitely can, chat about other things and not be so, us versus them kind of mentality like everybody else does.
You're not going to do the us versus them mentality because that's what everybody else does? Wait a minute. This is Timio. This is the number one most well-known, infamous globe earth troll in the world that all he ever does is play people against each other and act as if he is debunking the truth about flat earth, and he's extremely transparent. Yet, of course, him and the Illuminati shill pretending to be a flat earther are going to call some sort of a truce. Yeah, very interesting.
Because I think that you have fucking nuggets that I would love to explore.
I'm sure that you would love to explore his alleged nuggets.
Because I think that you have fucking nuggets that I would love to explore.
And seriously, and I personally don't like to wade through all of the, the memes and the stuff like that, but that's just me. There's 300 people in your fucking live, and they are enjoying it, so you're doing something right.
When did these globe earth trolls begin complimenting flat earthers for having a few hundred people on their show? The reason that this is happening for the first time ever is because the person he's complimenting is not a flat earther.
Yo,
Appreciate it, brother.
All right, well, happy Father's Day, everyone.
Hey,
See you later,
IPS,
P. Morris.
did I offend you last night?
No, you were drunk. Have a good night.
Yeah, he's drunk. Later, bro.
I guess that one didn't know last night that this Illuminati shill is actually his superior, so of course he has to publicly submit in order to privately apologize in their own little way. And how very forgiving of the possibly psychotic, possibly pathological liar, Illuminati shill posing as a flat earth truther.
That is interesting.
Well, I think that the point has been made extremely clear. If you stuck in this far in this video, then there should be no question in your mind as to the true intent and character of the obvious Illuminati shill posing as a flat earther using admitted Mussolini-style fascist tactics, following the playbook, the 48 laws of controlling people's minds and controlling situations, referencing known Nazi propagandists' journals as their most inspirational books. If this Illuminati shill were any more obvious, I don't know what I would say. I mean, this is about as obvious as it gets. Again, they are sort of under some bizarre contract to disclose all of this to us in plain sight. But of course, I'm going to be attacked by the minions of this Illuminati shill who has somehow inserted themselves into the Flat Earth Truth movement, and people just buy right into the obvious malfeasance and deception and subterfuge that this person is pulling off. So, anyone out there who is following this person, I'm not saying that you are all Illuminati shills. What I'm saying is that this person has deceived you, and if you have a gut reaction to attack me because of pointing this out, you may want to check your premises. I will say this again, that by making this video, I realize that I'm opening myself up to attack. However, it's more important to me to get the truth out to the actual genuine flat earth community about this obvious Illuminati shill. And by making this video and voicing my dissent, I imagine that the people in this video will try to claim copyright ownership of this, although I will, of course, claim fair use, as my use of the material within this video definitely is protected by the Fair Use Act, as well as by the First Amendment. And hopefully, again, my goal in this is to hopefully, wake at least one single person up to the deception that is awry in terms of this particular person that was the topic of this video. Now, in opening myself up to attacks, that's fine. I can handle that. I'm not worried about attacks, but I just want to warn people that if this video has achieved its goal and has changed the trajectory of the events to transpire leading up to this deception, which the controlled opposition players here are trying to foment, then it will be a success, although it will make me seem to be crazy or paranoid because my gut instinct or my dissertation here does not come to full fruition, although, again, that is to be expected. These sort of people will change their tactics if they don't have the popular consent to sort of kill this red herring effigy of flat earth. So please, people, do not be deceived by this. We don't need a really quite absurd hoax stunt to prove or disprove or put the nail in the coffin of flat earth or globe earth. The debate is over. The earth is not a spinning sphere. Thank you so much for your time. God bless.
We definitely can, chat about other things and not be so, us versus them kind of mentality like everybody else does. Because I